This is the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. Hey, Ryan, happy Star Wars Day.
Happy Star Wars Day. And Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, and Cinco de Mayo, yeah. I'll say a couple of things. We did not really, we're like sitting down to record and it's like, oh yeah, it's Star Wars Day this week. And so it shows you, number one, how well planned the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of is. Although
this is incredibly well planned, Dave.
We do have a Star Wars themed show, but that's just
Sure
because
do.
every other show that we do is more or less Star Wars themed. So it's a lucky accident, you know, like a broken clock is right twice a day. But we didn't plan it. It is not being released. It's being very sort of perfectly released at sort of like, 12:01 a.m. the day after Star Wars Day, which is kind of exquisite if you think about it. And I want to start with a very I don't know what the word is, a little bit of heresy. I'll start with a little bit of heresy. Can I say something? I hate Star Wars Day. I fucking hate Star Wars Day. I find it to be a giant fucking waste of time. I'm not interested in idiots telling me happy Star Wars Day. I'm not interested in people who don't really like Star Wars bothering me about Star Wars. And quite honestly, I'm not even that interested in the people who love Star Wars bothering me about Star Wars. I would much rather talk Star Wars the other 364 days of the year than talk about Star Wars on Star Wars Day. I feel like the schmuck that accidentally wears the green shirt on St. Patrick's Day. That's how I feel like on Star Wars Day, where just every person who vaguely knows me thinks I want to engage them about Star Wars stuff. Anyway, I sorry, I fucking hate it. So happy Star Wars Day, Ryan.
I will also say that just delightful that's the most Dave Mandel rant that we've had yet this season on the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. It's the man who loves Star Wars more than pretty much life itself.
Anything and everything. I love it. And let me tell you what I hate: Star Wars Day. So yeah. Happy Star Wars Day.
A true self-loathing Star Wars fan. Here you go, folks. There it is. Yes, I agree. I don't know. There's a certain charm in it. But people generally leave me alone. But I do understand where you're coming from. However, I'm excited that we have a nice tie-in today, and maybe we'll get some internet lift.
We have a lucky accidental tie-in, and we will promo the heck out of it. Before we start with what's new in props, I believe we have an actual sort of, I guess, a retraction. Maybe this is a first. Is this a first? This is our first retraction in the history of the Stuff Dreams.
I feel like we've apologized a number of times in this show.
We've apologized, but this is a true retraction. This is a true retraction, which is, was it last episode? I guess we ran an ad for the fine people at Athenaeum Comics Gallery. They were a new sponsor, wonderful original comic art gallery, really wonderful. I really dig it. A lot of indie guys there and all that kind of stuff. And I made a joke in the ad about the fact that the owner, having a PhD, and how proud his parents must be. And what would you say he responded, I guess, in a friendly way. There was no threat of lawsuit, although I vaguely detected like a sort of an underpinning of lawsuit. It
was underlying, but yes, he quickly came back and let us know that he had gotten a full ride for his PhD. His PhD was covered, and that his parents were actually very proud of him.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I'm going to go now on the record. I'm going to push all my chips in, and I'm going to say, no, they're not. But anyway, I think they're proud of the PhD. I don't think they understand the comic art gallery. That's my honest opinion. I think left to their own devices, when they are talking to their friends, when like his mom is talking to her like good friend or whatever, and she says, "What's your son up to these days?" And she goes, "Well, he has that PhD, and he opened a comic art gallery called Athenaeum Comic Art Gallery." The other friend goes, "What?" And then the mom goes, "I don't know." and I stand behind that. So maybe not the retraction that we thought it was going to be, but again, happy Star Wars Day,
A
everybody, and
tepid
the good people.
apology.
Yes, and the good people at Athenaeum Comics. What's new in props, Ryan? I have one thing to start with that is
Yeah.
non-Star Wars related, Star Wars connected, which is my stupid condo building decided to put in a new fire alarm system that
Oh,
required
good.
access to the apartment. And while I obviously am very happy that the building is not going to burn down, because I do feel like most of the people that live in the building are perpetually just falling asleep with a joint lit. Basically, that's
Mm.
the demographic of my building. Um, uh, they had to come into the condo and basically had to like open up the walls in like 3 spots so they could
Oh,
run this sort of alarm speaker system in. So after delaying them for like a month and a half while they basically did the entire building, I finally made a date to meet them and kind of, everybody masked and everything, but also like I was like only 2 people allowed in at a time. And I had to grab my assistant, and she and I basically, you stick with him, I'll stick with this guy. I had to go over in the morning, a couple hours early, tape everything up because they were going to go into the walls, tape up like tarps and stuff. It was just it's like a prop nightmare. There is truly the
uh,
worst part about owning props is actually just like that sort of like what happens if
maintenance and
like if
upkeep.
yeah, it's just like if I'm looking behind you, if a pipe breaks where you are, just like it's not like you can just go, oh, I'm just going to lift this case by myself and move it. And it is my nightmare. They did a wonderful job. We kept it all pretty clean and good, and I think it was all okay. And I will put up a picture of the tarps just so you can sort of see a tarp over Chewbacca and whatnot. But it's just like it is a prop nightmare. So that is my what's new in props. I survived it. I made it to Star Wars Day. Happy Star Wars Day again, everybody. But it was awful. So that was my what's new in props. So yeah,
Yeah, I will say, first off, the that's not going to prevent your apartment from burning down. It's just going to alert you
it's gonna
much sooner
slow it
to the
down. It's gonna
fact
it's gonna be a
that it's
slower
on
burn.
fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're going to know with great confidence that your that
Oh,
your museum
good.
is on
It's burning
fire.
down. Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yes. And I will also say, yes, the letting workers into your prop arena thing is one of the great headaches of being one of these hobbyists, as we as we sound like, my private plane is too small. But yes, it's
No,
a
yes,
pain,
I
and
realize it's a high-end problem,
it's a
but
it's a
yes.
headache, and then you have to talk to the guy about the thing and what's that, and and whatever, and it's constant thinking, and also just keeping things safe, and
Yeah,
if you're gonna go away, or if you're gonna move, how am I gonna store these things, how am I gonna keep these things safe, how am I gonna lock them up, what's the temperature in the place, can we go away for that week in the summer and not leave the AC on, all these things,
yeah, and in
it's
the
a
and by the way, in the simplest form,
our
just the dust. Can I just
objects are a
honestly say
burden.
the dust, like, because they're
Yeah.
cutting into drywall, and it's just there's no one has ever invented the way of like, making sure there's no dust from the drywall cutting. It just does not exist. Can I tell you what my real nightmare would have been? Because they come and they're really nice and they're just doing their job, whatever. But of course, yeah, as you put it, and they see the props and they want to talk about Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. My
They
nightmare
want to
would have
wish you a
been
happy Star
I
Wars
was going to
Day.
say my nightmare would have been to do the repair on Star Wars Day. That would have been the
Oh, yes,
worst.
there you
Yes,
go. Okay.
yes. Then
Yeah.
then we're really, hey, did you know it's Star Wars Day? Yeah. So yeah. So I don't know. Some version of that is my nightmare.
Very good.
Anyway, what is new in your prop world, my friend?
This is very cool. It's not an original, but I think it's one of those replicas that rises to the occasion of being there in and amongst the originals, and it just in the sense that it's so cool and kind of fussed over and well done, and I sort of insane. And there's this guy. who you may or might not be hearing from in short order on this podcast.
This may or may not be what we call a segue, but go on.
A scripted segue into our thing. But no, this is a real thing, and I've been staring at this thing for weeks and wondering how I could possibly convince him to build one of these things for me, which maybe we'll corner him about later in the episode. But so there's this guy, lifelong Star Wars fan, builder researcher named Gino Sabatino, who has built a fully articulated, like as it was in Empire Strikes Back, the original film, Yoda puppet, and it's just amazing. I mean, it's just amazing.
Insane. It is truly. He really, and I know Gino quite well. And if there was some way we could ever get him on the show, but
Bart, see what you can do.
Yeah, Bart, make some calls really quickly. But one of the things, and I do think he'll talk about this later on with props in general, but he really not only sort of attacked it sort of scientifically, but really also just like in the work of the putting his hands on it, just really truly like figured out how the Yoda puppet worked. I mean, there's no other way of sort of saying it. And so it's full of like replica parts and castings and all this stuff, and again whatever, but when I see it, it is haunting, just because it is Yoda, especially in a world where Yoda in the Star Wars movies has sort of transcended in his Jedi spiritual self to all CGI, which he looks not like Yoda.
Well, not like this, and it's that's the thing that you're hitting on, is that it's so crazy to see this, because when you see even just the still photos, even with it not in motion, you just immediately say, oh yeah, that's Yoda, and you realize how long it's been since you've seen a recreation of the famous original Yoda from the two original trilogy films.
It remakes you appreciate, because I can't think of any other word, just what an accomplishment the puppet was, but also the performance, the acting, and those scenes are between Yoda and Luke, on Dagobah, especially those first ones, the early scenes, before you get into the training and the stunts and stuff.
The drama,
just the character stuff, again, years before CGI and Gollum and whatnot, but just getting that out of a puppet in a real world, it's pretty spectacular. Anyway, Gino is a master, and we want to welcome him to, oh my God, Gino, oh my God, what are you doing here, Gino? Oh my God, you're here.
Bart turned it around.
Yeah, no, way to go, Bart. Gino Sabatino, welcome to the show. We'll give you a little introduction. I know I sort of went ass backwards there, but that's okay.
It's fine.
Gino, it says here you are a professional industrial designer, art director, and Star Wars Classic Trilogy costume prop preservationist, which I can certainly attest to, because you have helped me with numerous of my displays and whatnot. Gino is the one that helped me put together my TIE Fighter costume display, and then more importantly, my Stormtrooper display, which is, hint, what we'll be getting to. And Ryan, you want to continue those hints for a second?
Yes, Gino's dedicated over 2 decades to researching, collecting, restoring, and reproducing authentic Star Wars costumes and props from the classic original trilogy films. I like that he keeps highlighting in his very nicely self-written bio. But just want to remind you,
Gino Sabatino,
it's not by accident.
Prequel specialist is here with us. Prequel specialist, and huge Duel of the Fates, or whatever the hell the last one was called. I don't even know. Or is that the fate?
Star Wars Duel of the Fates. That's perfect. And he's also worked on various projects directly for Lucasfilm, and as an art director, developing costume, prop, and statue-related projects for official Lucasfilm licensees. So Gino kind of knows everything about Star Wars. That's why we have him on today. Star Wars icons, in all caps, there across all social media, is the way you can find him, find his work. Hopefully, we're going to hear a lot about his deep Star Wars knowledge tonight, but I would love, Gino, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us, but I would love to hear about Yoda. Tell us about Yoda and what's going on, and how all this started.
So this is like a 4-year-long project. It's the longest project I've ever worked on, consistently over that kind of stretch of a period of time.
It is the definition of obsessiveness, in a wonderful way. I mean, God bless you. It is crazy. If I could have done it any faster, I would have, but
it ran its own course in that time. Like I was lucky enough to have access to all original components, like for all the head and the ears and the hands, and like from all people that we know and that we're friends with. Like some people had some of these components, and another set of friends had these components and stuff from Lucasfilm archives. I had access to like the original wardrobe, and then the original head mechanism still in the archives. So I got to spend some time with that and take lots of pictures and try to deconstruct and reverse engineer that thing, which, you know, if you've ever seen it or look at it, it kind of looks like you're looking at the inside of a watch clock. So I never dreamed in a million years that I would ever be able to, not me, but anyone would ever be able to figure out what Stuart Freeborn was thinking when he made this. So, but yeah, I've come to the,
because it's really not, I mean, what you really appreciate
circle
with Yoda, I mean, again, we're going to get to other things, but what you really appreciate with Yoda is it's not like they were able to just go like, okay, let's just grab that other puppet we made and we'll make it into Yoda. You know what I mean? It really was almost like a from scratch build, almost like they were inventing puppets while they were inventing Yoda, if that makes any sense. Like there were just, there were certain things. Yeah.
He was the most sophisticated puppet for its time. And like, I mean, you can see this in all the documentaries. George Lucas actually is on the record saying like this whole movie like hung on whether Yoda worked or not. If Yoda didn't work, the whole movie was just going to be in the tank.
So, I mean, was this your ultimate passion project in terms of being a Star Wars fan? I mean, you've built so many things. You've had hands in restoration. You've helped with authentication.
Over the years, I've seen like full costume, you know, replica displays that you've done like at various, you know, Star Wars celebrations and whatnot. But this seemed like a different level. Just again, the full,
even for you,
yeah, the full build, so to speak. Yeah.
Honestly, it wasn't. It's just that, you know, to take, you know, like a Darth Vader from complete to finish and without being able to go any further on him is a much shorter distance than to take a perfect Yoda Stuart Freeborn replica. It's like a much longer road to get there. But the way I see it is it's just a project like any other. It just took a lot longer, with way more meat on its bones. And I mean, I've had to learn so many other weird skill sets. And one thing I didn't really think about is like a dog chasing a car. It's like, well, what do you do when you catch it? Like, okay, I made this puppet and it looks just like the real thing. I don't know how to puppeteer it. I'm not a puppeteer. I got to learn how to puppet. Like now I've got to learn this skill. And then I've got to learn how to film it. I don't know anything about filming or how to like make things look good or video edit or whatever. So like all these things, it's like, well, that's great. You get this puppet that's finished. Now you've got to make it look good because, you know, what good is it if it's just sitting there and you can't do anything with it that people, you know, it just looks lifeless.
No, now that you've built it, people sort of want it to be Yoda, which I guess is a whole other
and if it
thing.
doesn't, if it's not puppeteered right, if it doesn't look right, that all people will notice is it doesn't look right. You know, something's not right about it, even though it's, you know, as accurate as you can get on all the other aspects. Like if it's just not worked correctly, you know.
So ultimately what you built is a modern, I mean, it's basically, it's everything. I mean, is that the easiest way of saying it? Like it is.
Yeah, it's like a time. It's like a time machine like going back to the set of Empire.
It's like they built another one back then, except you built it now.
Correct. Even down to the metal, weird British little metal components that they had in England that Stuart Freeborn probably just pulled off something like I tracked all this stuff down and found it and put it together just like he did. And to be honest, now that I've made one, if I ever wanted to make another one, I think I could do it in so much more simply. Because like I think he was tinkering around as he was figuring it out and made it a little overly complicated. But because I didn't know that and I was learning it as I was building it, kind of going through the same process that he was doing. I didn't know what things I could cut corners on or not do this or not do that. And
well, is that the next? Is that the next version, sort of Yoda Puppet 2.0, where you kind of simplify and perfect it? I mean, come on, there's something interesting about that.
I'm so Yoda'd out. Like I'm ready to like move on to something else.
We're gonna browbeat you into that. We need two limited run of two
Yoda 2.0s. Well, yes. but with you, Gino, do you feel like? I mean, again, look, and I look, we all love it. It's sort of like, as you put it, this was a project and it took longer than you thought. Is your next project just simply now? I'm making this up. Like do you now just look towards the next thing and go, wow, I wonder how they made Jabba the Hutt? I mean, I'm making this up, but you know what I'm saying? Like, do you have your eye on your next? You know what I mean? Now that this one is
Yeah.
you're kind of taking your victory lap. It's on, you're showing it off. You're going to be at Monster Palooza showing it off. You're going to be displaying the Yoda puppet there. You're kind of taking the victory lap with the Yoda puppet. It is done, as you put it. Are you already starting to think about what's next?
Probably is, as of like 2 years ago, I was already thinking about what was next because I was just burnt out. Like, oh my God, like I'm so ready to just do something different. But like, normally when I would work on stuff, I kind of bounce around anyway. But I realized that with this, bouncing around on like this 4-year project was going to turn into like an 8-year project. And like, I was like, okay, I'm just going to work on this until it's done, no matter how long it takes. And then I can move on to something else. And I have like, lots of other projects going on and various degrees of completion that like I always, kind of like an ADHD person, like which one do I want to work on? Like maybe I'll work on this one for a little while and maybe I'll work on this one, or I don't know. But now that I've kind of done the like focusing thing, I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that. Things get done faster instead of everything getting done at once at the end, like 4 years from now or 5 years from now. It's like, oh, yeah, I can have something like every 6 months or every year or something. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, and the other thing, the thing that I was thinking about looking at this, which I think this is all great, and everybody should go and check this thing out, because it's just an amazing. It's like one human willing something into existence, which I always just love to see.
Yeah, it really shouldn't. It really shouldn't exist. But sorry, go on.
It really shouldn't exist. It's an abomination.
I'm terrified to bring it out to California. I'm not going to lie. Like. I'm like, I can't bring it on the plane because it looks like a bomb. But then I'm thinking, like, would TSA think that someone went through all this trouble to make a perfect Yoda replica just to put a bomb in it? Like, but I know that if I try to take it through TSA, they're gonna want to like take it apart and take it out and touch it, and I'm gonna be like, don't touch it. Like, what's wrong with you?
It'll be sort of like it'll be like the shoe bomber, where you know how we all take our shoes off now forever, the rest of our lives.
Take your Yodas off.
Yeah, please put your Yoda, take your Yoda off, and put it through the metal detector, sir. From now on,
remove any puppets. Puppets can only be 2 ounces. You can only have 2 ounces of puppet on the plane. But I mean, what I would tell them, Gino, is simply if the plane goes down, that who are you going to rely on to lift it back up? And I would just point to Yoda and just.
That never occurred to me. That's brilliant.
Self-fulfilling
and also
prophecy
tell
right
them
there.
Happy Star Wars Day. Don't forget to tell them that.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so in the intro,
wish
when
them
you guys
a
are
happy
talking,
Star
Dave,
Wars
to
Day.
your point, I completely agree with you about the whole Star Wars Day thing. I'm like sitting over here laughing, waiting for you guys, and that happens to me too. People always like. My sisters, everyone who knows me, they see something Star Wars and they think, oh, I saw this baby Yoda coffee mug. I bet Gino would love that. Let me take a picture and send it to him. Maybe I'll buy it for him. And I'm just like, no,
I like that they don't even buy it for you. They just show you a mug that they haven't bought you. That's almost
because
better.
I think secretly they want me to be excited so they can buy it for me. But I never give them the reaction. I'm always like, I can't even respond in a positive way because I don't want to encourage them.
I'll give you the equivalent of it.
Like I'm annoyed.
Yeah, no, I'll give you the equivalent. It's like it is the thing that drives me crazy, followed by people on Facebook wishing me a happy birthday. That's my other one. They're very equivalent in their own way. I'm not interested. If you know me well enough to call me and wish me happy birthday, great. I do not need to be told happy birthday on Facebook. I've tried to change every setting on Facebook so that people don't know when my birthday is, but invariably it kind of happens. And then it's just happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. And it's just literally like happy Star Wars Day. Anyway, yeah.
I did this too because I have an incognito profile on Facebook because I hate Facebook and everything it stands for and exists about it. And the only reason I joined Facebook is, of course, because I'm a pathetic miserable loser collector. So I needed to know that I wasn't missing out on any kind of information.
Well, no, that's
exactly. This Facebook profile and then went on, but I created a fake birthday and I was like, well, what's a good fake birthday? So I just made it the premiere date of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So every year on Raiders of the Lost Ark's birthday, I get this, not inundation because not that many people know I'm there, but people that don't know that that's just a fake thing because they make you put something in. And then as you pointed out, there's no way to turn it off. There is a way
you can turn it off so that the people don't get the alert of it, although they can still find
They
it.
can still see
Yes,
the
yeah,
thing.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly, yes.
and it's like, and then they get the memory of like a year ago you wish it. So it's just
Right.
it's this like hellhole you can't get out. So now I spend my entire June 12th, which is not even my birthday, telling people no, it's actually not. It's not. I don't like Mark Zuckerberg, so I have to go in this whole thing about that. But then I just end up wishing them a happy Star Wars Day. So so
You should
Gino,
change it to May 4th. Yeah.
the thing I will say, one last point on the Yoda, which I think is what made it so cool for me to see, is because unlike so many of the other things in the Star Wars universe that we obsess over, and one of those we will get to tonight, Yoda doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's it's that thing is gone. I mean, there
And
are
I'll
parts
go-
and pieces
I'm
and
going to go one
costumes and
step
whatever,
further
but the
too,
fact
which
that
is
you recreated something that doesn't exist, which I think that's what I think makes it so cool to me, is there is not an original.
there isn't the original. You can't, it's not like there is a full puppet that, is. And also, I'll go one step further and say, look, I'm sure you have your own opinions on the various replica props that exist, in terms of the manufactured, albeit even limited edition helmets, costumes, and whatnot. But there is nobody selling a replica Yoda puppet that you could buy. So there's also just the
that you could puppeteer,
right, that
and
you could
stuff,
actually
yeah.
puppeteer. Yes, there are statues galore, but an actual like store bought like
Right.
like replica puppet, even if it was 10 of them or 100 of them or whatever you want to call it, it does not exist. So there's the two-part thing of you've kind of created something that even like to some level Lucasfilm doesn't have, but also nobody has. So I don't know, wherever that the forbidden fruit of it all. Yeah.
So I did want to say though, it is kind of amazing how much of the original Empire and Return of the Jedi Yodas do exist. Just not in the form that we're used to
not in the
seeing them.
form. Yes, but that's what I mean.
Not in the
Correct.
thing that people are expecting
not,
to see.
Not
Right.
ready to go on
Yeah.
somebody's, or I guess in
Right,
this case,
right.
two different people's arms, right? In the actual case
Right.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So they have like in a private collection, they have like all the head skins from Empire, and they're all in various states of jacked upness. They have the one Return of the Jedi skin in the archives. The original wardrobe from Empire, which is also reused in Jedi, is also in the archives. And his accessories and I mean, it's pretty amazing that it's still around. And the head mechanism, I mean, they only had one, and then they just reused it again for Jedi,
Right.
so it was still there. So I don't know, but yeah, just like you said, like there's been so different, like you were talking about the animated Yodas, like they tried to make a Yoda. I should have probably put this in the just to pull the photo up, but the Yoda that they made, the practical puppet for Episode 1, where they resculpted him. They actually had access to like real assets, but they just did their own thing, and he looks kind of weird. And then for Episode 2, then they kind of went digital, and then
but it's almost like when they went digital, they digitized the weird one from 1. And again, obviously we are not
it's
there.
Completely,
we don't know
yeah,
what
it's
they,
completely,
I know
it's like they did their own thing.
Some aspect of quote unquote making Yoda younger to whatever extent. Although it does seem, by the way, that in the grand scheme of life, the 20-year difference,
900, like
in Yoda's life,
one more
really
gray hair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that all seems sort of stupid, but it is interesting that in some ways, and I think this is true of Lucasfilm, and of course this will, I'm sure, get us, there'll be people very angry about this, which is one of the things in the sort of prequels that have extended into the everything, the TV shows and everything, it's almost like they reject the handmade flaws that made everything to me so cool on the original 3 movies, and all the irregularities that we treasure, the fact that it isn't symmetrical, that it isn't perfect, like, oh, look at that
Do
weird,
not get me started on this topic.
bump, that weird tilt, you know what I mean? Well, I think it's a good run into where we're headed in a second. Assuming we ever get there, but yeah.
I've been trying for years to make connections with people working on these movies. I know people that work on them, and I've been so close. I've talked to costume supervisors, put everything up to them. Like, look, I have all these original assets for all the primary and secondary characters from the classic trilogy. So when they reappear in all these new films and TV shows, here we go. You don't have to remake them. You don't have to redevelop them. There's nothing wrong with them. Like, I can put together a Stormtrooper where you don't see glue marks like on the original. You wouldn't even notice it, like, or and
or you can have glue marks too if you want them. But yeah.
But like,
but by the way, but they're not
is,
interested. They're not interested. They
Yeah.
want a perfectly computer aided design Stormtrooper helmet. Yeah,
I don't even think
honestly,
it's that so much. I don't even think it's that so much as I think that they just want to do it. They don't want to step
that may
aside
be true too. Yeah.
for someone else to do the work. They're like, well, like if your job is to get to make the new Darth Vader, and you're like, well, we could have this other person do it. You're going to say, okay, I guess I don't want to do it. I'll let.
I don't disagree with that, but I do think there is unfortunately like an attitude where they look at the old stuff and they only see the flaws. And to me, the flaws are what are part of both what made it so great, but I will also say made it a part of that sort of George Lucas, Ralph McQuarrie lived in world.
The
and
used
even
universe.
the helmets were irregular. Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's like a face,
they've eliminated that and sort of perfected things, even though they're pretending they're still in the used universe. Anyway, we can't.
I'm with you 100%.
We're already off the rails.
Like we could do a whole podcast on this topic. I could talk for
Stormtrooper helmets,
this.
Stormtrooper helmets, Stormtrooper helmets. That is what we're supposed to be talking about. Tonight's episode is a deep dive into the Stormtrooper helmet. That's why you're here. I'm gonna right this ship. For the 6 people still listening, I'm just gonna Stormtrooper.
Now we're only going to talk about 2 out of the however.
Now
many we have,
no, we're going to get into it, but we're going to go even deeper, dare I say. But honestly, we wanted to bring you on because we love, we just thought like you're the perfect guy. As I said earlier in sort of our introduction, you're the one that kind of came out to LA when we really we'd obviously chatted, we'd spent some time together, but that was where you and I really kind of, we were together for a bunch of days where you helped me put together my Stormtrooper display, which I've talked about before. We sort of recreated the missing pieces in a sort of a gray color, kind of like almost like museum dinosaur style. We put the whole thing together, got it up on the mannequin. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. And then it turned out years later, the Ryan Stormtrooper helmet is one that you did a little bit of work on. And I guess honestly, when it came to Stormtroopers and our desire to both talk about them, it was sort of like you were the no-brainer guest, as they say, for Stormtrooper stuff. Ryan, what did he do on your helmet, just as a starting point? Do you remember what specifically?
So I actually think Gino, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you actually did not do the work on this helmet. But is that correct? But it
was brow trim.
Yeah. Well, yes, you provided that, but I think that there was like a missing lens.
Was there more work? There was more.
The little lens sheet in the inside was missing when I think it first came into Prop Store.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a here and there, but the beautiful thing about this was that you were able to, with the help of Dave as our little matchmaker, you were able to tell me the history of the helmet, what you knew about it, what that you felt that it was absolutely 100% authentic. The story that came along with it was good too, and it was just nice to have kind of, I know the prop store guys very well. I trust them. Brandon's as steeped in Star Wars as anybody, save for possibly yourself. But it was just, it was good to have you on there authenticating, because I know you've done that. You've worked on a bunch of the helmets, but also you've done this thing of finding screen matches or helping people.
Yeah, I was going to say,
kind of provenance and backstory.
Every time a helmet shows itself, auction or whatever, I'm either whatever, an IM or a phone call, whatever it is, and it's just sort of like, hey, have you seen this? And 97% of the time, he's like, oh, I know about that. Blah 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 blah. Here's everything I know about it. Here's who had it. Blah blah blah. Or no, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of this, or I've got a picture of it from 1984.
Give me like a day.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like this kind of thing, or don't touch it. And let me say this too: the beauty of you, as opposed to Brandon, I mean, he's got a wife and children. Sometimes he's hard to get a hold of. You, sir, you're just sitting there working on Yoda. Very easy to get a hold of you 24 hours a day.
I just love I love to talk. Like I'm come on. Like
it's not a
I'll
criticism. It's a compliment. God bless
true.
you for not having any children and just sitting there working on that Yoda. I can get a hold of you.
Dedicated man.
Yeah. I know. And like me and Brandon, like Brandon is a great guy, and like we've spent so much time going over stuff together, just like how we, you and I do, or we're just like going through photos together and like trying to figure something out. And, so I've spent lots of time with him doing that exact same thing, so he's also someone I really trust in this hobby, and I don't trust a lot of people, but he's for sure one of them.
No, he is fantastic. And if he had been available today, needless to say, he'd have been our guest. But again, unavailable. So we were lucky to get you as the fill-in. So thank you, Gino. That's really great.
It's good.
I get it.
You jumped right in.
I would bump me for Brandon too.
No, this podcast has heard enough of Brandon.
Yeah, we're.
Can we talk Stormtroopers?
Yeah, let's talk Stormtroopers here at the hour 17 minute. Stormtroopers.
It's going to be a 5-hour podcast.
Stormtrooper.
May the 4th. Yeah. It's a 4-hour podcast.
Who designed them first of all, right out of the gate? I mean, where did this all begin? What was the first drawing done, the first reference to them? Where did it all start?
Yeah, so it was Ralph McQuarrie concept sketches, and then from there they went on to the sculpting team who had a body form, and then they sculpted the armor onto the body form. And this is where it gets a little fuzzy, and I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but because a lot of these people aren't still around, but the going theory or the going story of what people claim or whatever right now, and I'm not contesting it or confirming it, but is that
but like I was going to say, like everything else with Star Wars, there are many people looking to, claim credit, and many of the people are not around anymore to counter. Yes, exactly. Sorry.
Liz Moore sculpted C-3PO and a bunch of other stuff for Star Wars, and she also is given credit for sculpting the Stormtrooper, while Brian Muir is given credit for sculpting the helmet. And the first image I think that I have for you guys, like that's a picture of the earliest sculpt of the Stormtrooper. You see
it's so
cool. Clay sculpt on the left, and then you see the one in primer on the right, which was sculpted or put together by another designer named Nick Pemberton. And those were like the two concepts that I guess George had to pick from or whatever. And so, I mean, there's history right there in that shot.
I mean, it's amazing because obviously what you're seeing in the one on the right is obviously sort of, it's almost, it's sort of, I guess, closer, if you will, perhaps to the McQuarrie look, the original sort of idea that like they were wearing these masks so that they could go out, into space. That was sort of part of what Ralph was thinking when he was drawing it.
Stormtroopers and Darth Vader, they're space suits.
And certainly on the one on the sort of the piece on the right, the earlier version of it, it's Vader-esque in its own way as well. I mean, wherever that fits in. And this version of the Stormtrooper sort of maybe a little more, not exactly rounder and softer, but maybe a little bit. But even the current Stormtrooper as sort of a little bit of an evolution from the original McQuarrie designs is sort of a little bit of a fascinating journey. So who do we think sculpted this, or who do you think sculpted this? Is that where we're headed?
Well, I mean, right now we say Brian Muir is the sculptor of the helmet, and Liz Moore is the sculptor of the armor. But I was going to say, back to your point about the, like if you look at them, I mean, Stormtroopers they're based on a skeleton. Like their face is supposed to look like a skeleton. And Darth Vader's face is also very skeletal in image, and they kind of, I mean, you can kind of see.
No, but I mean, if you think about the Stormtrooper costume, if you think about the undersuit being black and then these pieces of white on it, those are, I mean, think of the classic Halloween sort of skeleton costume of the bones on black.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what they were going from. And I think it's part of why it's so, at the time, it's a funny thing. This is a very hard point for a lot of people, but in 1977, when people saw Star Wars for the first time, and I was just listening actually, or reading, I should say, or reading and listening to this Christopher Nolan book, the Nolan Variations, and he's a huge Star Wars fan, and he was talking about how in 1978, living in the UK, when he and his friend, he had seen it in America, and then finally everyone in Christmas in the UK saw it, and one of the
Yeah.
big things was the bad guys are wearing white. In
Oh
1977,
yeah.
that was a
A
huge to
big deal.
do, but the skeleton thing kind of gets overlooked from time to time, and I think
Mhm.
it's one of those things that once you see it, you never don't see it. Anyway, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little all over the place, but in a good way, I think. So yeah, that's our show. A little all over the place,
It
but
is
in a good
it
way.
is a
Yeah.
deep dive. So
So take
where do
us.
we go
Yeah.
from
Where do we go
where
from
do
the
we go
sculpt?
from the sculpt?
Okay, so moving on, like the next picture in my little. So just for people watching the podcast, I put together a photo stream of different things to kind of guide us through this whole Stormtrooper story. We go from one picture to the next, we'll kind of start to reference things from them, and
And
Yeah,
just
um,
well,
this is
so
a fine point to say this. If you are listening, and you obviously will be able to see these things on our various social media, which is at Props Podcast on all the different social media. But more importantly, if you go to the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of YouTube channel, you can actually watch us talk about it and also see these pictures kind of cut in to the footage as we are doing it. So I think that's kind of cool as well if you want to check out, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we move along, and just follow along at home. Keep going. So now we
okay,
get
so
to the
yes,
test
this next
assembly. Yep.
picture. Yes, this is like the first known photograph that we have that was taken by Andrew Ainsworth, of the first assembly of a Stormtrooper helmet that we know of, and it's a hero style helmet.
And we
Um,
should bring up Ainsworth, who is sort of, again, another one of these guys with a very rich Star Wars history, and probably a lot of lawyers as well. So
yeah.
I'll tread gently, but I
I'm
will.
not afraid to. I talked to him personally. I've had lots of conversations with him before all this. I have no problem going on the record about everything that we ever talked about.
Well,
Because
God
come
bless
at
you.
me,
And by the
bro.
way, I'm not that
Like,
worried either. I will simply say, I'll put it as he has claimed a certain ownership of the Stormtrooper
yes.
design, I believe, in court, that uh, I think, when you see obviously some of this other stuff is somewhat in dispute, but obviously his skill was as a plastics guy. Is that really how he came
well, no,
into the
he
Star
he
Wars
he,
world?
he actually he actually was an industrial designer like
Okay.
me. So he
Yeah,
and
but
he
did he
made
ever
like
build
fish
a but did he
ponds,
ever
and
build a Yoda puppet? No.
he did
Why?
not.
He had a wife and
He
kids.
did
But anyway,
not.
go on.
Probably. But basically what they did to make the stormtroopers, they had the clay sculpts. They sculpted, a clay armor form onto a mannequin. Well, it was a body cast of a real person. And then what they did was made molds off those clay parts, and it to pour solid plaster chunks, like a leg and a solid arm or a solid torso or whatever. And then you've got these solid parts. Well, at the time, they didn't know that they were going to vacuum form the stormtroopers. They thought they might do them out of fiberglass. Originally, they were going to be chrome and not white, but they
Mm.
just couldn't figure it out. Um, so what Andrew Ainsworth was tasked with was, okay, we've got these the solid sculptures turn into costumes. Uh, how are we going to figure it
And
out?
as
How are we going
far
to do
as
this?
we know, on the body sculpt of the costume, is it the pieces that we now know, or did that change as things went along and they sort of had to figure out how to get the costume on people, so to speak?
Probably 90% is
Was
there.
there. Gotcha. Okay.
Some of the design though is was determined by how it had to be manufactured.
Sure.
So, for example, what Andrew Ames what he had to do was, okay, I've got this thigh chunk sculpt. That's basically a tube, like a cylinder, a solid cylinder. Well, when you vac form something in plastic, you can't form over a round surface. Like you can only do half of it at a time. So it
Mm.
had to be seamed on the sides. So then, well, okay, well now you've got a left half and a right half. Well, how do you put the two pieces together and not make it look janky or unintentional? So, his idea is to come up with putting like a stripe down the center to cover the seam. And then that became part of the design inherently, but not because he was like doing concept sketches. It was just kind of like, oh, how we got to solve this problem.
Right. He was
to hide
solving
this
the
seam
how are
line.
we actually going to wear it, because it's how we have to mold
Right.
it. Yeah.
And the same thing with the helmet, like the ear caps on the helmet. It's like they aren't really supposed to be there. They're not in any of the drawings or Macquarie sketches or anything like that. And you've got these seam lines. So it's like, we'll put the brow trim to hide that seam line. We'll make some separate pieces to go on the sides to cover those seams. So a lot of it is just covering the shoddy limitations of vacuum form parts that kind of dictated, like, it kind of affected the design that we know of, that when we look at it looks intentional, but no understanding how it was made, you kind of see it like, oh,
Yeah.
I know why they did that.
Going from
Which I kind of love,
theory to
because
practicality.
it's hard to imagine the Stormtrooper without the brow, and yet it's there, again, as you put it, it's there for the reason, but it's really hard to imagine a world where that wasn't there, which is kind of fascinating. I mean, I love sort of, I think another story I've talked about, by the way, connects to Yoda. It's, what's his name? Irving Kershner, in talking about Yoda, sort of called art in a discussion I got to see with him once for the anniversary of Empire. He talked about like all the limitations of the Yoda puppet, and what made it all work was, he sort of said, where the creativity sort of bumped into the limitations, or the creativity because of the limitations, that made art. And I think that's a perfect like sort of explanation of the Stormtroopers, that the limitations of the molding process led to the better version, much in the same way, dare I say, that the budget limitations that forced them not to be able to do a prison planet and a Death Star weapon, and they realized, let's make one
Sure.
Death Star is also where she's being kept, and you
1000%.
get it's a 4 million time better movie. And it's
Yep.
something I think a lot about when I watch big blockbusters, where you kind of go, oh, I see, they've built like 4 different prison planets. I wonder, would this be a better movie if it was just one? But anyway, I
maybe it's
do
not a
love
good thing
that fact. Yeah.
Maybe it's not always a good thing that you can do whatever you
Right.
want.
That you can
And I
do
think
whatever
that
you want.
You
that
could
there were
there's
these,
a list this long of movies that you could say that about, especially when we're talking about Star Wars.
So at some point, and we've got a picture of it, there's this famous shot that I've had sort of on my computer for a million years, which is sort of the big pile of Stormtrooper
Love
helmets.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's our next
which
picture.
is just one of my sort of favorite things. So Ainsworth basically gets tasked to make these things. He figures out the plastic. You want to talk a little bit about sort of a little bit of the process, like what it involves?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. I don't want to jump ahead to one of the next pictures to talk about the hero versus stunt thing, because that's
we'll get to that in a minute. But
thing.
just conceptually, what are we making here? Like, what are they doing? How do you want to? Yeah.
So this is him. He said that there was a limousine that would come by and pick up the stuff, and they put it in the limousine and pick it up and take it to the studio. And this is just sitting out in the pile. This, when you make stuff, if you ever worked in a studio or anything else like that, and the work's all completed and you want to take a beauty shot, like, here's all the stuff I made, like laid it all out to make a pretty picture, like here's all, and that's basically one of those pictures, like, here's a batch of these things getting ready to go off to the studio, and that's where this comes from. And there's like several other versions of this picture, or other ones that he took, but it is kind of crazy to see them in that stage, because after he formed them and assembled them and painted them, they went off to another studio where they did all the detailing and hand, all the detail areas and all the stripes and all the other stuff.
That's basically, if you will, that's where the wardrobe department sort of took over, if you will. He kind of delivered them, and then they kind of took it over.
I'm not sure
there.
if they just call it the art department. I'm not really
okay,
sure. I'm sure it's in one of the making of books. I'm probably getting it wrong, but yeah, those people took over and took it from there. So he, and I'm not even sure if he assembled the armor himself. That's kind of a gray, blurry area, or if he just delivered the components. But if you go to our next picture, that's our very...
So one question, Gino. I'm seeing
sure.
about 30 helmets there, and I'm guessing these are. I'm taking a guess that these are the stunts, and that the heroes were made separately or in a different process. Is that the thinking, that that's about how many there were for the whole film?
So there's actual documentation saying that he charged for 50 helmets, but I don't believe that there were anywhere near 50 that ever made it to the film. I think it was probably
Yeah,
closer
that
to 30.
I agree with that, because I think I only have 42 in my collection, so 42 Stormtrooper helmets. So I think
Well, I've
41
got
now,
number
though.
4.
You did
I did
sell
get rid
one.
of one, yeah, so 41.
Yeah.
So I guess that number seems a little high as my guess. This test, this Stormtrooper, I guess, what can we call it? Film test footage, not footage, but stills, is pretty great. And I mean, it's a guy standing in a warehouse, and it looks incredible. I mean, I don't know what else to
with
say.
with a 2x4.
Yeah, exactly.
Or some pole.
They were going
Yeah,
back and
it's
forth
so great.
between lightsaber or 2x4, the weapon of a Jedi Knight.
Yeah,
Were you thinking you could just-
a 2x4.
I know what you're saying
an
about
elegant weapon from a more simpler
the
time.
laser
Yeah.
blaster, George. We get it. But wouldn't it be great if you just hit a guy with a stick?
What if I'm just gonna say 2x4?
I mean, just throwing it out there. So some of the cool things about this
March
montage of
15th,
pictures-
1975, which is kind of cool. Happy Star Wars
Delightful.
Day, March 15th, 1975. New Star Wars Day.
Oh.
We'll do 2 a year.
New big date.
Yeah.
It does say that.
Yeah.
No, what I was going to say was you can see they were still figuring out some of the armor components. So when they had sculpted the body forms, they didn't really think through all the little glued on parts. There's like a little cover plate that goes on the belly. There's like a belt that goes around the knee, and some other accessories, shoulder connect, like all these different things that they just weren't part of the original sculpt. So these are all things, again, that I think that Andrew was probably responsible for in completing the design. So you could see, like on here, like he's actually got like a waist belt around his leg. And that's like, what?
Right.
Like, look how fat and chunky that is. And and then you could see on the bottom left hand corner of that photo, that little
The thing on the back
thing
of the
on the
helmet.
back, which is actually the comm pad that goes in the arms of the TIE pilots and X-wing pilots.
Oh, okay.
It's curved, so it could fit on the back curve of the helmet. And for whatever reason, they made a prototype of the helmet for a Stormtrooper, and they made a prototype of a TIE pilot with that thing on the back of them. And I don't know if you've ever seen the TIE pilot that has that on the back, but it was actually sold at auction like 15 years ago or something.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, they ended up scrapping that and ended up being repurposed for the costumes in the X-wings and TIE pilots.
The thing that strikes me about this image, and this ties into what Dave and I do for a living, is I'm looking at this and it's like, yeah, that's a Stormtrooper, but it's really that last 10% of finish that really brings the thing to life. And I'm looking at this and it's like, the only thing that's really missing from this, other than the details you were just talking about, which would only really be seen by true hardcore Star Wars fans at this point. But the thing that's missing from this is all the little paint and the details that go into finishing the helmet and just making it feel like, right now, this thing, you're looking at it and it actually just feels like it's a very cool design. And I'm definitely seeing the skeleton, but it just feels like a plastic suit.
Finished.
Right. Whereas once you apply all the paint and the things that would later become decaling and all that, it starts to feel like an actual military uniform or a functional spacesuit or whatever.
It's funny.
It is.
I was going to say that exact same thing, which is it sort of turns it more into armor from a costume in some way, and it kind of gives it that sense
makes it feel
of
functional.
Purpose. Yes, gives it that sense. Exactly. Yeah. Which is, again,
and this is the thing.
I think it's a hallmark of the Star Wars universe, but it is interesting. It is that final mile, it is those last few steps. Yeah.
And this is the thing that I struggle with, Dave, and sort of like what I do is like, stuff like this at this level is brought to you all the time. And a lot of times that you're told like, this is in process. It's WIP, whatever. And, you look at the thing and your brain sort of, sometimes you have to really learn to listen to that the little voice that's just saying, there's a thing that I don't like here and I don't know what it is. And even if you can't verbalize quite what it is, learning to listen to that thing, that instinct, because that's often like, I'm never going to be the guy that says, go paint some chevrons in that thing. And you need, darken the smile or whatever to make it more imposing and more skull like. That's not really going to come from me. But I will say it just right now, it just feels like it's still a costume. It doesn't feel like a functional spacesuit. And then that's a note that an art director or a designer or a costumer can take back and actually make into something. And it's fascinating to see this because this image is sort of showing you that process.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that makes you kind of awesome in that respect, Ryan, because I don't think that that's as very common. I think a lot of times people in your position are very much like to throw their, want to make their mark on something, whether they're a designer or not. They just want to be like, I like this, change it, and then it just comes down the line. And I've had talked to people who worked on some of the sequel trilogy in the UK, and they would say people would just come by and just like on a daily basis just come and say, here, just add this or put this on here, and it became a platypus.
Yeah.
And to me, like coming from a design background, it's like what a platypus is, and that's like something that wasn't designed like coherently. It was just something that like kept getting stuck on and added to, and
it was made on the last Friday of the month.
Yeah, it wasn't a vision that was carried through. It was something that was just like, and it's like, well, just because like you're the director doesn't mean you have an opinion. Like you don't. I don't know. In my opinion, I don't think that they should stay in your lane.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody works differently, but it's also, every director, writer, actor has the example of on the other side of somebody giving you a line reading, or feeding you a line of dialogue, or telling you a shot to make. And it's just that that's the thing. I mean, that's the wonderful nature of the collaborative business that we work in is trying to give people enough room to run in their own world where they're going to come back to you with the best version of the solution. That's often giving them the open-ended sort of, this is the issue I'm having note versus here's the solution note.
Oh,
anyway.
Well, yeah, for sure. Because then it's like, well, here's the problem. What could we do to solve this? Versus like, I just think this should be blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my kid likes blue.
For our big note show, I'm a much bigger fan of hearing sort of what you're thinking, feeling, or what you're missing, so to speak, than if it was just blue. I not a big fan of the solution pitch, I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, I guess there's a way of pitching it in the sense of, have you thought about blue? Well, let me go think about that, as opposed to you better go make this blue, or this needs to be blue. But
it's blue or I walk.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's a two by
it's like,
four,
or you can walk.
It's a 2x4 or else I'm leaving, and that's why I was fired from Star Wars. Yeah, but it is
exactly. So back to your point about the details on the helmet, though.
Yeah,
I just want to say this before we got off track. But they were figuring out how those details were going to be done, like through filming. So like they actually had, the first helmets that they made for production that they finished out were the Sandtroopers, and they made like 6-7 of them. And the way that they were detailed out, they had painted them one way, and then you can see, like if you've ever had one in your hands, like you can see that they painted over it, and then they decided on another way, which is how they appear in the movie. But then, from the time of Tunisia where they were shooting there to the time that they were in England, they decided, let's refine it a little bit more, and then it's different again. So that they kept working through that, during filming.
But again, you're mostly talking about we are talking about those finishing touches, sort of like paint jobs, decals, whatnot. I mean, like whatever you want to call
weathering.
It. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so can we jump into that, Gino, and just talk about, we've made a couple mentions. People know at this point, listening to this podcast, there are hero props and costume pieces. There are stunt props and costume pieces. I actually didn't realize this until much later in the game, that there were quote unquote hero Stormtrooper helmets, which I guess in my mind I would be, if you really thought about it, of course, Luke and Han taking the helmets on and off, you would want some, I think, interior detail on that helmet, and some, holding up to close inspection. It's being held in the camera. It's being carried around by the main actor. You're going to want it to stand up to greater sort of screen scrutiny than the sort of workaday Stormtrooper stunt helmets. But can you talk about the difference in construction of those helmets, and like, did different people work on them? Which did they build first? That sort of thing.
Okay, so basically here's how it went down. If we move on to the next picture, you can see a perfect shot of a hero and I hate that somehow, like years and years and years ago, someone called it a stunt helmet, and I'm just like, it's a background helmet.
It's background. Yes.
People aren't like, it's not jumping in. So I hate calling it background, but I mean, calling it stunt, but I feel like if I don't call it stunt, people won't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I always just say background stunt. But anyway, so that picture, it kind of shows like two examples, a hero and a stunt right next to each other, and like right in frame. And it's like the best, at a glance, like shows the differences and everything. So the problem that they had was, after they made the sculpt, and you have this like beautiful skull shaped thing with all this sharp detail and teeth and recesses in the eyes and all this stuff, and this ridged chin with all this stuff in it. Um, when you go to vac form over top of it, when you melt the vac forming, you're basically melting plastic and using vac form suction to come down over a form. Um, you know, you have to be able to get that off after you suck down onto it. Because if you're not able to get it off, then the plastic will split and tear, and then you've got a unusable part that needs thrown away. So the problem that they were having was they couldn't get, in the white plastic, the white ABS plastic, they couldn't get pulls off of the original mold because of how sharp and detailed and undercut some of the features were. So
so you're talking about the very ridges and whatnot were almost making it impossible to do.
Yeah. So like, this is basically a stunt helmet cast from original first gen. So all these recesses, like in here, these deep recesses, the recesses in the teeth. You can see if I turn in the light, like these ridges here, like they're really deep and sharp. All that stuff gets stuck. Like when the plastic melts on it, gets stuck and you can't get it off. So you're trying to wrestle it off, and you're wrestling, and you think you got it, and then it splits, and you're like, damn, So they needed to find a solution, like, because at the time they're like, we need to make. Andrew was like, we need to make 50 of these. How are we going to make 50 of these? We can't even get one off the mold. So him being a pond maker, which, I didn't really know what a pond maker was. I don't know if it's a thing just in England or here, but he would make what they call fish ponds, which I guess you dig a hole in the ground and you have this formed, shaped bowl that goes
like a plastic into lining sort of bowl kind of a thing. Yeah.
Right. And then you fill it up with water, and that way it doesn't just absorb back into the ground and everything. And the plastic that he was using to make those was this green colored HDPE polypropylene material that
high density polyethylene.
Yes, is very resilient. It's like if you ever held like a milk jug, like one of those clear translucent plastic milk jugs, it's the same kind of plastic as that. So you could literally like try to tear it and you can't tear it. And so they're like, okay, well, we'll use this plastic, but it's green, so we'll have to paint them. But the problem with that is one of the properties of HDPE is nothing wants to stick to it. So that's why you see on all the
that's why we have all the paint chips.
That's all the chipping and everything else like that.
Yeah, look at mine.
Yeah, I know yours is like really touched up. So what they did was, they basically had to like sand the surface and then spray it with like a etching primer and then hit it with white and just hope and cross their fingers for the best. And like some of the examples we had today, like are barely missing any paint, as to where some other ones are missing like massive amounts. And so, I mean, the actors, when they were on set, they just, for something that is fragile like that, I mean, they just walked around with them in their hands. They had them on the ground. They like had them banging up against their
because they basically had touch-up kits on more or less on set, where they were constantly kind of coming in and basically filling in, and sometimes you can even see that a little bit where they fixed it. I will say,
absolutely,
in defense of the design, I don't recommend this because obviously they've become, somewhat expensive on the prop market. But in the old days, when Stormtroopers were like, you could buy one for like $100, they made for great,
as you did often.
So you could just put a fish and water in them and then watch the fish through the lenses. It was actually really nice. I wouldn't do it now, but you just know that the plastic allows you to do that, which is kind of great.
Your helmet number 33, Dave. It actually is you've created quite an undersea scene there.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, filled with coral and whatnot. It's sort of
it's got the old timey diving bell guy with the line on the end of it and the angelfish.
He's sort of a Darth Vader diver.
It's very tranquil. Brings me a lot of peace when I come over to your place.
Let's get into though more like that's what we're calling the background helmets. And so how do we differentiate then the hero helmets? So
so the background helmets are made out of that green plastic. And they're done that way so they could get them off the mold intact. But then they would have to paint them and everything else. But they retained all their sharp details because that plastic is real flexible and you can get it off the mold. So but because when you paint them, as you know, like they look pretty jacked, like the paint flakes, and they needed the cost you I think it was for 6 hero helmets, and that's obviously like for Luke and Han, and for any other close up when the Stormtrooper is supposed to be close up in the frame, they just needed hero helmets, right? And as you know, throughout the movie, like there's all kinds of background helmets that end up full frame in the shot that they didn't use the hero helmets for, but I don't think that was intentional. So
you get the sense
like,
that
okay,
even having made the hero ones, they couldn't tell the difference on the set. That like they just sometimes people were just picking up helmets.
Well,
here,
and it was
you know,
so
like,
run and gun.
yeah.
It was just like get the shot, and move on.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
will say, really
Gino,
quickly,
have you?
God, I was just gonna say, God bless, by the way, the paint chips, because it's the paint chips that have allowed us to really screen match most of the
Yes.
helmets that we've identified. And perhaps if they were all
Backgrounds.
perfectly made of white plastic and were just immaculate, our jobs would be a lot harder, as opposed to,
I
oh,
think
look at that paint chip. Yeah. So
we'll get there when we get there, Dave. But I think that's evidenced in Return of the Jedi, as we will see. There's not
Oh my
nary a
God.
matched
Yeah.
helmet from Return of the
Forget about
Jedi
it.
for that very reason. But so Gino, I would ask, because I've seen photos of, and obviously there's evidence of in the film. I've seen photos of at least one hero quote unquote helmet in a private collection. Have you actually handled one in your time as a researcher?
This is actually, this Stormtrooper, this whole costume is actually molded from
From
that suit and from that helmet. Yeah.
Okay.
And the cool thing about that is actually in that photo that we're looking at right here, that's that helmet and suit.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's wild. Okay. So
yeah,
is that
guy?
Without betraying anything, confidences, anything? Is that in the Lucasfilm archive, or is that in a private collection?
It's in a private collection.
Sweet.
Yeah. And it's
Cool.
it's the cool thing about that is that's one of the troopers that was in the holidays Christmas special. It was also at the Oscars when they went up on stage. It was the Donnie and Marie special.
Oh, that's funny.
It's been in all kinds of things. And the reason that it existed in the first place is because they sent, at the end of filming, they sent 2 costumes over to the States for a pickup shot. It's also the Space Trooper when the Millennium Falcon's pulling into the thing, and you see the little Stormtrooper with the backpack on, like, waving or whatever. It's that. So, they went through all their costumes and picked out what they thought were their best ones after everything was all beat up at the end of production, sent 2 of them over, and that's, they never went back, and they just stayed.
They just used them everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why. And yeah, everything that's stateside that they,
so what would you list as the key differences between the sort of the hero helmet and the stunt helmet, if we were just to
background?
Background. Yes.
So backing up a bit. Yeah. So in order to get white hero helmets made out of the white ABS plastic so that it wouldn't split getting it off the mold, they had to make modifications to the mold. So they ended up taking all the deep recesses and softening them up. They removed some of the teeth, the outer teeth, just to help not have it catch.
Right. There's just fewer, if you look at the whatever we to call it, the teeth, the smile.
Yeah, there's like 3 on each side as opposed to like 6 or whatever. And there's no super deep recesses for it to get caught, and everything is just generally much softer than the background face. And they softened it up to the point where they could get it off, and then that's how they made the black ABS TIE Pilot faces and also the hero faces, because ABS plastic, whether it's black or white, it still is gonna want to split if getting it off the mold if it's too sharp or has undercuts.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the interior of the helmet? Is the hero much more detailed on the inside? Is it, because some of the backgrounds you just see, like, there's not much more than just a couple pieces of foam in there to secure it to the actor's head.
Pretty much the same thing. They all have an elastic chin strap that snaps underneath, and then a piece of yellow foam that's stuck up inside, and they just put it on. There is a difference between the lenses. Like the heroes have a bubble green lens, and the backgrounds have like a green photo gel.
Yeah, it's like one sheet that goes over both eyes. Whereas, Jedi, we'll get there, but they went to that bubble lens thing as they evolved the helmets over time.
Yeah.
And do we think that was just also, going back to the originals, do we think that was just, cost cutting, meaning when they were just doing sort of the background helmets, the sheet was easy enough and they were worried that for the close-ups they needed the bubble, or just
I, I think for the close-ups they wanted the bubble because it looked more like a finished helmet and didn't look as
sure.
janky. Because when you look at a Stormtrooper and you see that flat, crinkly lens, it looks kind of janky. And for the being background helmets, like you'd never notice them. But also, if you ever put on a Stormtrooper helmet with bubble lenses versus one that has the sheet, it's like you can see out of the one with the sheet like perfectly, without any distortion. You got complete clarity. Whereas you put the one with the bubble lens on, it's kind of like everything's all distorted and your sense of depth and all that is kind of out of whack and all that. So
can't see a thing in this helmet.
Wanted, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's real.
Yeah.
But I'd always just kind of assumed that was because for all the background people, it's just easier for them to move around because they were falling all over the place. Like, have you ever seen bloopers behind the scene footage? They like coming through the door and falling on their ass, and
well, it's right. It's in the cut, right?
And,
the guy that smashes his head on the
yeah, he does
on the Death Star blast door. Yeah.
Right.
And then the chin strap, and again, not to I don't want to betray anything because I know some of this stuff is closely guarded original helmet owner secret, but there is something very specific about that chin strap, right? That goes to the authentication of the helmets. Is that
sure?
Is that just fair enough to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's like a guarded secret or anything.
Okay.
I mean, like so many things in Star Wars, there are certain things that, in order to be able to distinguish them from a replica or something that's real, it can come down to little things like the hardware or certain material,
the off-the-shelf things,
all kinds of things. And sometimes, like when people find out what those things are, it makes it harder to distinguish a replica from the real thing, which is why people tend to be secretive about that stuff. And I'm a big proponent of that. And that makes me really popular. But yeah, like the snaps are an England, like made in England snap. And they use them all over the costume, and they use them on other props and everything, and they're very common. And now that you can still find them, but they're extremely hard to find and they're expensive. And yeah, it's one thing that, like, if you saw a helmet that had a strap and it didn't have that snap, you'd know it wasn't real.
Bad news.
You couldn't say it wasn't a replica or one that wasn't made not for the production, but you would know that it wasn't if it wasn't that brand.
Yeah. And then the Sandtrooper.
I was just going to say the snap.
Go ahead, Deb.
A snap doesn't mean it's real, but no snap means it's not. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or a different snap.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So the only thing I wanted to go back to was, and then I want to talk about specific examples, is the Sandtrooper. So the Sandtroopers, I guess, was there a hero Sandtrooper, or were they all that kind of background HDPE?
They're some of the most janky helmets. They're the first ones they put together. They didn't know what they were doing. Like all the paint, like the hand paint work and like all.
And hey, really quickly, let me just interrupt you there, because we keep saying put together. We should also talk about the fact, because this does change the evolution, the assembly. But originally, when they molded them, we were talking about the seals earlier. We're talking about basically 3 parts, basically, that become the Stormtrooper helmet, right? That's kind of what we're talking about.
Well, just 4. So you've got
4 technically. Okay.
You've got the back and cap. And then you've got the 2 ears.
Okay, I guess you're right. 2 ears.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Sorry.
You group them together as one.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Understood. Yep. Okay, and that's the original construction of them, which does change as we move forward. Just wanted to get that on the record.
Sorry, that actually carries through. That carries through all of the classic trilogy troopers. They're all 2 pieces and then 2 ears on every version.
Why did I think there? I guess then, what am I thinking of? I thought there was.
I think you're thinking. I think like for when they got to the Mark II and the Return of the Jedi, instead of screwing the ears on, they actually glued them on instead of screwing.
Is that what I'm thinking? Okay, because I thought I thought they simplified. Maybe it was just the simplifying of the molding process, but maybe that's all I'm thinking of then. Okay.
So
I stand corrected.
And then other differences with the Sandtrooper. Obviously, there's a paint difference too, right? Because they weathered these things to make them look like they had been working out in the elements, getting blasted by sand, right? So there's kind of a wash or a paint. Because I've seen up close and handled the Move Along helmet. That's with a friend. I've spent a lot of time with that helmet, which is lovely and gorgeous. And it's actually funny because to hear you talk about how, using your word janky, the Sandtroopers were, that helmet actually stands out to me as one of the better ones that I've seen. But then I also realized that I don't know what kind of work has been done on it, post sort of Christie's find, because I was one of the ones that went through Christie's about 20 years ago. Jesus, getting old.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be able to do a restoration on one of those helmets. Not the move along, but
not that one.
But the stop that ship guy, the one that talks to the snitch.
Yeah,
and it was missing its ears, so I got to like finish that out and everything. And it's in this list of photos when we get to it. But
yeah, we'll get there too. But that one's coming back up for anybody that's looking for a Stormtrooper helmet.
Talk about those. That's why it's at the end of all this. I've both the two helmets that I restored are coming up for auction. And we can talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's like crazy at the same time. Like, you know, I've only, you know, restored 2 helmets from A New Hope that were Stormtroopers to this level, and they're both coming up for auction at the exact same time. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, well, we'll be curious to see, because it's really like, I mean, I don't know the other one. We'll get into that, but the Stop That Ship helmet,
and Stop That Shit too. Is also
stop that shit.
Come on, stop that shit. Come on.
Yeah. Why do we have to fight about everything? But that's a gorgeous helmet, and just a great, classic scene, Stormtrooper versus Han Solo in the film. So I'm very curious with how much, there's basically been every major auction or auctioneer for the last like 3 or 4 years running. There's been a really good major Stormtrooper helmet in auction, or 2. And I want to see how the market keeps up with all of this stuff, especially with this big helmet coming. This should be, this would be the kind of helmet, like if you're sitting around on the sidelines waiting for your chance at a Stormtrooper helmet, this is
a
screen
one. Matched one with dialogue, a primary helmet
like, with dialogue. This one does feel like, again, without any offense to some of the others, this one feels like a reckoning is coming.
Yes, exactly. So let's see. But so let's. I mean, we're here. Let's talk known examples. I mean, the wonderful thing about Star Wars as a collector's film is that when they were making Star Wars, they weren't aware that they were really making Star Wars. So more has kind of gotten out from the original film than probably the other 2. I mean, I guess you could make an argument that the combined Empire and Jedi, there's a lot of stuff out there from these films. But
most of the stuff from Jedi is still in the archives. Like, very little Jedi stuff has actually gotten out and compared to the other 2.
Yes.
But it's also a percentage thing, which is when they get to Jedi and even Empire, they're making so much more of everything that even though a smaller percentage gets out, it's an interesting thing. But
the chance of it being matched or something.
Exactly. But way more Star Wars stuff. So there's a couple of hero helmets. I mean, I think is a great place to start with sort of the classics, as we can say. Hey, Ryan, guess what?
What?
Did you know that there are over 5,000 items for immediate purchase on the Prop Store website? 5,000 items from over 16,000 titles available for immediate purchase from the UK and US locations on propstore.com. From a screen-matched police officer costume from The Fifth Element for £18,995 to something that may sound familiar to you, a Colony cast chairback for $75. That seems like a big price differential. There's a wide variety.
So the cheapest thing on the website is
there's nothing cheaper than Colony on the website. So from Colony to Fifth Element is what's on the Prop Store element, but everything in between.
It's quite a gulf there.
And new items are added daily. It's a great way for new collectors to get started. You don't have to bid in auction. It's also a way for experienced collectors to fill in holes in their collection. Just type in a keyword in the search bar, use filters on the website. You can set up these searches to find items from your favorite titles. There's a wide selection of items to choose from: props, costumes, set deck, production, made items, replicas, cast and crew items, storyboards, movie posters, production artwork, call sheets, toys, and a whole lot more. It's pretty incredible right now on the all-new Prop Store website. Pretty great.
And even better, now through May the 8th, you can get up to 50% off on all Star Wars items on the website. So
happy May the 4th be with you, everyone. As you know, my favorite holiday of the year.
Dave Mandel, big fan.
But I mean, it's pretty great. Up to 50% off Star Wars items.
I mean, that's the nice part.
that's a pretty darn good price. They have also got special giveaway items and all this kind of stuff. So check it out. It runs through May 8th. Their May the 4th promotion runs through May 8th. Little
May the
confusing.
8th.
But May the 8th be when you can't buy anything more for 50% off. There is if you have to suffer the indignity of this stupid holiday, you might as well at least get 50% off on the
Save
prop
money.
store site. Yes, exactly. Save
That's
money
right.
and feel a little bit better about this stupid thing that is right on up there with, like, I'm sorry, like Secretary's Day and also like
Wow,
National
Dave going
Dog
right
Day.
at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These are my big issues. But
I
yeah,
Pancake Day is a big deal here in the UK, and I'm sticking by Pancake Day
I'm
because
not
Pancake
familiar
Day
with
is awesome.
Pancake Day, but
Um,
and by the way,
so
speaking of, I should say,
speaking of,
speaking
I was going to
of,
do
yes. Oh, go ahead. You go
May
for
the
it.
26th. You
May
can
the 26th also be with you.
all of May be with you. You can go see our friends at Prop Store at Star Wars Celebration, which is going to be in Anaheim this year, at the kind of epicenter of Star Wars and entertainment and all Disney things. You can hop across the street and go see Galaxy's Edge and go on the Star Wars rides. But they're going to also have a great preview of the stuff that's going to be there in their spring summer auction that's taking place from June 21st to 24th out of Los Angeles. So it's their Los Angeles auction, and all
Yeah,
the Star Wars items,
they've
I guess,
always
or a
got
selection of
some
it
of
they're
like
going to
the
have there.
real. Yeah, they always have the killer Star Wars pieces, and I've already been we've been sort of told about a couple already, and we're going to have a preview for you
Yeah,
guys soon
there's
enough, and it's going
something
to
pretty
really
great.
blow you away. So it's worth checking out. And by the way, if you're there on Thursday, I'm going to be there. And a couple of us, myself and Brandon and Stephen Lane from Prop Store, are going to be doing a Star Wars prop, whatever they call it, panel. At
Oh, that's
I
great.
think, Thursday late afternoon around 5 or 6 o'clock. I should know. I think it's
Oh,
6 o'clock.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm
you
sorry. I'll
can
be missing
come
that.
meet the Prop Store gang not only at their booth at stuff, but you can come and ask questions about all of us. But
I'm
back to the
seeing
big.
something
Oh,
here. I'm
yeah, go
seeing
for
something
it.
here. I think this might be kind of new news uncovering. So June 21st to 24th, their auction. That's 21, 22, 23, 24. Is that a 4-day auction? This is a 4-day
One,
auction
two,
that's
three.
coming
That
our
is a
way.
4-day auction. And are we? I mean, I feel like I wonder if they're even aware that we are finally actually saying the dates. Have we ever been allowed to say the dates? Those are the dates
Well,
now. That's kind of cool.
it's printed here
Oh, is
in
it?
stark
Yeah,
relief.
we're reading it, and they paid
I'm
us to
reading
say it,
ad
so we're
copy
saying
given
it.
to me.
Yeah.
So there you
Um,
go.
Yeah. The other stuff, going back to the buy it now for a second, we're jumping all over the place. We gotta talk to Chuck. He writes these things, and I feel like the order here is very crazy. Buy it now items on their website, of which some of them could be Star Wars buy it now items, which will be on sale during the May the 4th sale, make great gifts for your friends and family who love movies and television shows. Why be ordinary when you can get your friends and family something extraordinary? And I will tell you, over the years, I have been invited a couple of times to some filmmaker sets. By the way, specifically Star Wars sets. I got to go a couple of years ago, and I got to visit J.J. Abrams' set. And then a couple of years ago, I got to visit the Han Solo set before the director change. And I got invited by the guys. And in both cases, I actually reached out to my friends at Prop Store, and off of the website bought a couple of items. I believe I bought I bought Phil and Chris. I think I got them call sheets from the original movies, or maybe they
Oh,
might
that's
have
awesome.
been Blue Harvest call sheets or something. I think they were Blue Harvest call sheets, which was cool. And for JJ, I feel like I got him something that said Avco, because that's what he was calling his, or maybe it was I can't remember what it was. So something connected to Avco, because I knew that's where he had seen it. And I think I also got him one of the passports, not the store-bought passports, but the passports that were used for people who visited the set of Empire Strikes Back, and they would stamp these passports. And I got him one of those
Oh, that's
stamped
cool.
ones because I got to visit. So these things make incredible gifts. And again, if you were finding a Star Wars item, you can get sort of a big sale. There's a big sale now, up to 50% off through May the 8th on their May the 4th store on the Buy It Now. What else can we tell them about Buy It Now items?
Well, there's a contest. Uh, And that's as you remember, we're going to find out who's loved more on this show. So you can vote for your favorite host by using the code Dave10 or Ryan10
Yes,
to get
very important.
10%.
Dave 10 or Ryan 10, and on a buy it now item, you get 10% off. So, for example, for Ryan, you could go on, put the Ryan 10 code in, and you could buy an incredible bridesmaid Annie Walker cake baby business card for $225. And you'd get 10% off that, and Ryan would get credit for that. And then you could also go on and you could buy from the Divergent series, the Allegiant, the light up hero rifle for $2,295 and put the Dave 10 code in for that one. And then I would get credit for that big
10 times
purchase.
the credit
Yes.
that I get. Yeah.
But you would still get 10% off that, which is really good. But to make it that much more confusing, thank you, Prop Store. The 10% off cannot be used in connection with any other sales, including the May the 4th sale. So the May the 4th sale stands alone, but you can't take 10% off those sale prices. But if you miss the May the 4th sale, if you hear this on May the 9th and you're like, oh my God, I missed the sale, you could still use the Dave 10 and the Ryan 10 codes to get 10% off a Star Wars item after that sale is over. But the 10% off works on all items, not just the Star Wars items, even during the May the 4th sale. That is as confusing as a way I can explain it. I think we've really...
Yes, I think that's right. But I think anybody that does take part in the May the 4th promotion, even though you can't use the Dave 10 or Ryan 10 code, you should immediately send an email to Prop Store and let them just know who your favorite host is and who should get credit for your purchase.
But by
I
the
think that's
way,
a great
while
way to
you
keep this
are
going.
buying something during the May the 4th sale, you could buy a Stucker Family newspaper article with photos from the gifted using your Ryan 10 code for $195. Or
there you go.
From the Haunting, a Hugh Crane fireplace head for $2,000, $1,995 using the Dave 10 code, which again would give me the credit for the bigger price.
That's I guess a pattern in these promotions.
There's a slight, very hard to. You need sort of an enigma machine to solve the pattern.
Yes, that's right. But you really don't need it because Prop Store offers a 6-month interest-free payment plan that makes it easy to finance your buy it now purchases. So if you spend $800 or £800, you can qualify for a 3-month interest-free payment plan. If you spend over £1,500 or dollars, you can qualify for a 6-month interest-free payment plan. So use your special code for 10% off. Remember, listeners of the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of podcast get a special 10% discount coupon on their buy it now purchase. So go to propstore.com right now to select some buy it now items for purchase. When prompted for a discount code, type Dave10 or Ryan10 to get your discount code and vote for your favorite host.
Unless it's a Star Wars May the 4th purchase, in which case you can't get the 10%, unless you're not buying a Star Wars item during that period. But either way, go to propstore.com, place your buy it now order today, and find your extraordinary. I can do that better. Find your extraordinary. You want to try it? Find your extraordinary.
Find your extraordinary.
Find it.
Extraordinary.
That was extraordinary. Back to the show.
That was how many hero helmets are in private hands from the hero builds, not the the ABS builds?
I was just going to say, going through these pictures, I've listed all of them and shown pictures of all of them and where they are. I don't name the owners of them, but I'll just say,
we don't name the owners, but we do put the address of the owners and a geo tag. We don't name them.
Right, not the owner, just where the helmet is.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Oh, these are gorgeous.
So the next picture, that's just showing like this 2-screen matches, which in my opinion, it just so happens to be, I think those are the 2 best examples of the helmets, not only in existence, but period. Like that hero helmet on the left is the best, most complete, best condition hero helmet that's in existence, which is where this one comes from. And the stunt helmet on the right is one that sold through Prop Store 3 or 4 years ago, and it was just in immaculate condition. And in my opinion, is the best example of a stunt helmet that in its most complete state with the least amount of damage and all that. In fact, it only has like that one scrape on the top of its head.
That was the
And
one
what
that had the really heavy paint on it.
had what?
That had like the really heavy done paint on it. That helmet. It was the
I
paint. It
don't.
was like the extra layer of. I just remember there
It had a lot of texture on it. Maybe you were thinking of that. The
texture.
the texture
Okay.
wasn't. Yeah, the texture wasn't from the paint. It was actually from the HDPE plastic.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But the scrape on top of the head, up until when I guess when the guy got it out from his attic or something like that, and was taking it somewhere like right before it got sold. That's when it got scraped. But this whole time it was sitting in his thing. It like I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe I'm getting the story wrong, but something he put it in the overhead bin on a plane or something like that, and it got scratched. I don't know, but up until that point, it was like flawless. And you know, and there's like a handful of examples of the stunt helmets that I think are like at that level. And I don't want to say, you know, but you know, as we go through them, like you might recognize some of them. But like in my opinion, those two, and it just happens that they share a scene, it's just kind of like a crazy coincidence.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool. All right, so
the heroes.
So the heroes. Yes. So you think there are what, like 3 of the 6 in private hands? Is that kind of what you're saying?
There are 6. They made 6 hero helmets for the show.
Okay.
And I think there are 4 of them we know where they are, and there are 2 that are missing.
But one of the where we know where they are, it's in the archive.
Correct.
Okay.
And the rest are in private hands.
Got it. That's crazy.
And the archive one.
So in theory, Han's helmet is in private hands.
Oh, I mean,
that's
okay.
Crazy.
So back to Han's helmet, because that's in one of the following pictures. We know that it survived the production because we've seen it like on tour. Okay. It's not in the archives, but I gotta believe someone has it somewhere. It's out there in the wild because, you know, it wasn't thrown away.
Yeah.
And, you know, those promotional costumes, like whenever you see them like touring Gold Circle or Toys R Us from back in the day, you know, those things always eventually pop up somewhere.
Right.
So, but yeah, I guess that's kind of the anomaly. Like we don't truly know where it is right now, but
we know it survived,
sure
as they say. Yeah. So there's what we call Luke's helmet, just to start, which is gorgeous. Yep. And that's in a private collection. The Han one, which is currently MIA, but we know made it because, as you said, it kind of shows up in American promo and press stuff and whatnot, right? Basically, that's the easiest way of expressing it. And then,
now, honestly, I don't know if that's moving on to that next to the Han's helmet picture. I don't know if that's. I know that was in a Toys R Us, but I don't know if did they have Toys R Us in England. I don't know. So I mean, that right alone would let you know if that was in England or the United States, because I don't think we know where that was taken.
Yeah, I don't think there was Toys R Us in England, but I only live here. But I don't think that existed.
Well, anyway, that was a toy store.
They have Toys R Us, but they called it Toys R Lorry, I think, or something like that. It's a little different.
There you go.
But they added a U, there's an extra U in it.
Us, 2 U's.
Toys Our OUR us.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So then there's the one that's at the archives, which am I remembering this right? They like had it but didn't even realize that they didn't realize for a period of time a couple of years ago. Like, this is going back a while now. There was a point where I think they didn't even realize they had a Star Wars helmet in their collection, and then it was sort of they later identified.
Oh.
Does that sound familiar?
I don't know. No, I don't know. Like I mean, I know that they've
again, I'm talking a long time ago, but like when I think it was somewhere when the new regime got in and started actually cataloging everything kind of again, is when they kind of started to realize what they had.
All around during the Andrew Ainsworth trial, at least that point in time they were around.
Yes, I want to say
even back further than that.
I want to say they identified it a little bit in the lead up to that trial. I don't know if that was why they were organizing stuff, but that's when they sort of figured out what they had. I think somewhere in there.
Gotcha.
And
just for the record, in case anyone's watching, all my friends at the archives, any of these pictures that show the archives, it's because they were on exhibit. They're not actual pictures.
I was about to say, you actually get to see. You can see the archives exhibit. It has toured and probably will tour again. You do not need to go to the archives, but this does seem like a really good moment to point out. Gino, you've been to the archives. How many times would you say you've been up there? A couple of times, right?
Yeah, a
Would you
lot,
say it's pretty
actually.
great? I mean, it's pretty incredible, wouldn't you say? I mean, how would you
I mean, it's
explain
almost
how great the archives
it's
is?
indescribable. I mean,
Yeah,
how do you
exactly.
describe paradise? Like, it's
Yes.
like, you know,
It's like, how do I say it? It's like when you're at the archives, every day is Star Wars Day. That's how I feel like. It's
yeah,
that good.
it
Yeah.
feels like May the 4th every day.
Hmm.
No, but it does. I mean, on a serious
good.
note, though, I, to me, it's like if I could be die and buried somewhere, that's where I would want to be. And you know, all the people there who allowed me to come for the times I've got to come, like I love them forever.
It is a great experience. It is, by the way,
And
possible that someone did die there because there are a lot of flies. That's the one thing I always notice about the archives. There's a lot of flies, so it is possible.
I mean, that's where I want my ashes scattered.
Yeah.
Dave, is that a possible way?
My ashes scattered on the ranch somewhere.
Is that a possible way for me to get in? Do you think, Dave? Can I just?
Oh, interesting. Sort of like a fly reincarnation kind of a thing. Is that
Well,
what you're
I mean, I
Scattering
think
Ryan's
maybe
ashes?
try to get myself in there as a Star Wars artifact. You know,
I like it. I like it.
Moderately known Star Wars fan Ryan Condal is now a permanent member
exhibit.
of the,
Yeah,
fixture of the Star Wars archives. P.S.
I will tell you.
Sorry
this,
for
though,
all
Ryan,
the flies.
I'm sure lots of people have talked to you about this, but this is my personal experience.
Not enough, as far as I'm concerned, have talked to Ryan about how great the archives are.
That's right. That's right.
But it's like, you know, you go there and, like, you know, honestly, like before the first time I'd ever been, you know, if I had heard that like some prop, like a Tusken Raider gaffy stick was like 6 hours away from my house, I would drive to go see this one thing that I didn't even really care that much about, because it was like, wow, that's a real thing somewhere. And then when you get there and all the stuff's there, your brain immediately prioritizes to the things that you care about the most. And you're walking these aisles of all this stuff that normally you would like freak out about any one of these little things. Yeah. But you're immediately like, where's the Darth Vader stuff? Where's the Boba Fett stuff? Where's the what, you know, and you just...
No, it's really in some ways why you kind of need to go like 20 or 30 times, because it's really on like your 18th visit that you really start to notice things you didn't notice the first 17 times. So that's something to think about.
And like, you're making it joke, but like he's not, it's like so
No, I'm
true.
not joking, I mean, like, in the least.
Like,
I'm not joking.
Okay. I was going to say, because
I have a very cruel co-host to this podcast.
I know, I was leaning into it a little bit.
He enjoys pulling my wings
familiar
off.
With
I believe the joke's going to be on me when one day you just send me a picture of yourself sitting on the iron throne you have in your living room with everybody's armor, just that you're kind of just got. So anyway, yeah, joke's on me. But anyway.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. And then there's a fourth one.
Should we talk? Yeah. Yes. No. Okay. Yeah. I was going to go on to background helmets, but I guess
let's move on to background helmets. So four that we know of what we think.
We're still on number 4 hero helmet. Did we skip past that one?
Well, we kind of skipped, but if you have something interesting to say, go for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Nope. I think we covered it.
They're great. I mean, it's amazing how I realized in looking at the heroes, you spend most of your time as a collector, if you're lucky enough, staring at the background helmets, because that's what everybody has, and then you look at the heroes and you're like, oh, these are really cool. It's really funny great.
Though, my eyes do get drawn to the lenses, the way the light hits sort of the curve of the lenses. It is a truly noticeable difference that does elevate it. That being said, though, what we were talking about with the mold pools, the sharpness and the extra teeth and all of those bits and pieces, I do prefer the look and feel of the background. It's like, for me, give me a background helmet, but put real lenses in it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it was the intended sculpt. Like the hero version is like the lesser, weaker, diluted version of what the original sculpt is supposed to be.
I mean, again, I'm way more familiar with the background ones, but the lenses do make a giant difference. But the mouths, I guess, like the two places my eyes go are some of the ridges, or the three places: the ridges, the lenses, and the mouth.
Short little
and
mouth.
Those more teeth are just, I don't know. For me, that does it. But yeah. So with the background stunts, again, we haven't identified all 50, but obviously
30.
this is what we're seeing. This is what we're screen matching a lot easier these days because of, obviously, we talked about the paint
4K,
chips.
yeah.
We've talked
Yeah.
about that. Ryan's, you've managed to not. Was it because of a paint chip, or what did you ultimately screen match yours on?
It was actually the paint job. So it's
the job. Okay, so more of a
yeah,
like
yeah.
the actual work. Yep.
So yeah, there's a on the kind of chin of, or I don't know what you would call those, the sort of environmental hoses that run along the side, along the jawline of the trooper. There are these little chevrons they're hand painted on there, and they become decals later on in the run of the helmets. But in New Hope,
we call those tube stripes.
Tube stripes. There you go.
That's in the
chevron is
world
just
of,
much
Yeah,
more.
Ryan, we call them tube stripes. Come on, everyone who's been to the archives
Those are
calls them tube
get
stripes.
on board,
Those
Ryan.
are speed holes, Dave. But
We call those
there's
stormies. They're called stormies, Ryan.
my fault. But one of them is about double thickness, and I guess Brandon, who keyed onto that when he was studying the helmet, he was actually looking to match a different helmet, and accidentally matched mine first in the process, because he was trying to eliminate. I think he was doing this process of elimination of trying to eliminate helmets, and in the process of eliminating, figured out that mine match. So that was the thing that started, and that on its own, I think it's pretty good when you see the image. The problem is the image that it matches to is a fairly wide image. It's very clear and it's in there, but you actually there's like 3 other bits of corroborating evidence, like the way the eye hole is cut, because all these things are kind of hand cut.
Well, it's that kind of thing of once you notice the
chin,
first thing, you can start to sort of find the
bing,
other
bing,
things.
Bing. Yeah, it started doing that. Yeah. So it's in one shot as far as we can tell, but it is a match on the Falcon.
But it is really interesting.
Arrival,
I mean, just to talk about the eyes for 3 seconds, because again, that's where they had to cut that out. And so on every one of these, when you actually stop and stare for a minute, the wonderful, I'll say, imperfections of the way it's cut, or sometimes like, oh, look how it dips up a little bit. I mean, I'm staring at what we're calling here stunt number 1, and look at just the left. I'm sorry, our left, the right eye, the sort of the upper part. That is irregular in a wonderful way, and you really can notice these things. From one, to another, just sort of the dips and whatnot of the cuts, which is just I love that fact. I guess I just think that's really cool. Yeah.
And I would say if ever you're trying to screen match a Stormtrooper helmet, the biggest identifier of everything is, in my opinion, the way this is painted on. It's every single one is different. There's no two that's the same. Even if you have a crappy blurry photograph at a distance, you can kind of still see it, or at least rule something out. Even if you can't see 100% guarantee it, you could be like, well, it's definitely not that one, because look how different that shape is, even in a blurry picture. But then if you get something where it's like, wow, look, that's pretty close, then you start looking for other things, like, okay, well, how close are the ears to the trapezoid? How many teeth are cut out? What's the paint look like on the teeth? Like, what are the draw? Like, you start looking at all these different features, and then hopefully you get like a couple different like bites on different things, and then and then sometimes you'll just see one thing. It's like, that's for sure it. Look how unique this one thing is, and it's like,
yeah. So
without question.
Yeah.
So is that Gino, is that your primary, like, I think this is actually interesting, which is when one comes across your computer that you've never seen before, or sometimes you're obviously contacted by the auction houses or a collector who's got one that maybe they want you to do some work on or look at. Your first attack, that's your first attack, sort of looking there. Is that, like, take us through, like, where do you go next? Like, let's say you manage to eliminate a few, but obviously it's you can't say, oh, it's that. You can go, it's not that, but okay, where are you going next in your screen match? Yeah.
So what you're trying to do, at least for me, my approach is like, obviously I get all my photo reference out and just go through one thing at a time, like one picture at a time, every Stormtrooper in that picture at a time, and just looking to either find similarities or differences. Because sometimes, like, you might not be able to find the similarities, but sometimes it's the differences that stand out. Like again, like I'd say, well, I can't tell for sure that it's this guy, but I know for sure it's not this guy because
Right.
look at how that detail is.
But are
And
you?
it's like, okay,
Is there
well,
is there an
next.
order? Meaning, like once you get past the chin, are you then maybe staring at the eyes first, or the teeth second,
Oh,
or are you just kind of
I
going
think,
picture to
yeah,
picture?
just off the cuff, because
Mhm.
it's probably not like that methodical.
Right.
I would say probably, you know, the vocoder, which is the black thing, then the teeth, then the tube stripes, then the ear spacing, because you know the ears could be more forward or back
Oh,
on the
how
helmet
much
depending on
they're
which
on or
side.
not, or if they're crooked or anything
Yeah,
like that.
or the
Interesting. Yep.
gaps in the ears,
Mhm.
things like that.
That's interesting.
The trimming of the eyes, but less so because like even though they're all slightly different, like they can still look incredibly similar. And it's really hard to tell without like incredible photos sometimes. But usually from like those things I just mentioned, like you can dismiss something or nail it like 90% of the time if you have good photography.
Right.
A lot of times though, you know, we just don't have good enough photography for everything. And, you know, like one of the helmets that I restored that's actually going up for auction. And I showed this to you, Dave, like at the time that I was doing the restoration, where the owner, like I believed I identified as one of the Sandtroopers. And, but we couldn't, there was just not that smoking gun piece of
Right.
evidence because
You were
like all the
seeing
paint
things.
had
I
been
remember
stripped
this. Yeah.
off.
You were seeing things
Like,
where you kind of went, this suggests to me that this is this, but it was
yeah,
not the, yeah.
Right. It was like there was so much, like so easily I'd be able to dismiss this from not being this helmet. Like I take any of these helmets in my list of pictures that we're going to be looking at, and I could easily dismiss all of those at a glance from that one helmet. And then, but the problem is, it's like, well, it's like you can't prove a negative. I guess it's like there's nothing that says definitively it's this one, but there's nothing that you could look at it and say it's definitively not. So that made it kind of tricky. And it's like, well, what do you do in that standpoint? So I showed it to a handful of people who I respect their opinion, and we were all kind of unanimously like, yeah, we all think it's that helmet.
Right. But it's
but
not.
we can't
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
put our, you can't like, it's not like, so, but yeah, I mean, that's basically how I run through it when I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So I think we should talk about just very briefly the sort of dialogue matched helmets from A New Hope, so people know what those are, and then I think we should move on to Empire and Jedi because there's so much more interesting stuff to talk about how the helmets evolve. So we know there's a move along helmet. We have talked about that before. That's in a private collection. It's gorgeous. There is the Stop That Ship helmet, which is coming up in the Heritage auction in June. So everybody kind of keep your eyes on that. It looks like it's their kind of quote unquote cover piece because it's the thing they're using to promote the auction. But it's a gorgeous helmet. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
If you've been looking for one, that's the one. Go get it. That's the one.
And I restored it.
And Gino restored it. Even better reason. And then there's your helmet, Dave. Tell us about your helmet.
Well, my helmet is there's one set for stun helmet, I guess is what I like to call it, but I don't know what anyone else calls it. At some point, I feel like people were calling it. I've got
your helmet in the list. I didn't want to name you.
Oh, you can
but
name
it's
me.
It's in the list. It's right there, and it's like one of the
great.
most lovely examples that we have.
I was going to say, I believe for a while, and I want to say this was told to me. I'm sorry, this is so not about anything, but I think for a while I was known simply as the Seinfeld guy. This is going back to like the sort of late 90s, and so for a while this may have been the Seinfeld helmet. That's what I was sort of told
that's good.
At some point.
No,
yeah.
I'll tell you because like I live in that weird gray necro world where it's like, I'm not really a replica maker person. I don't do costuming. I'm not in that world of people, but I'm also not in the screen used people because like all my stuff is replica, but it's like first gen replica. And I can tell you that the entire world of people who like buy replicas and all that kind of stuff like that just know that that's the Dave M helmet, and they have no
Dave
idea
M.
who
now
you
it's
are.
Dave M. Okay, fine.
Yeah, they don't know.
Fair
they
enough.
don't know anything about you. They don't know your last name. They don't know your affiliation with anything. It's just like it's just the Dave M. There's some dude named Dave M. who has this helmet.
I just want to say, Dave,
thousands of people know who you are from that, but they don't know who you are.
When I disappear up into my office to record this podcast once a week, I just tell my family I'm going up to see Seinfeld guy. So.
And then your daughter says,
what I
Dave M? Question mark.
That's
But
right. She loves your trooper helmet though. It's one of her top 3 favorite.
I mean, this helmet is my replica of your helmet, Dave.
yeah.
Like this is supposed to be without all the chipping and weathering, but
that's great.
This is what I think of when I think of the quintessential background helmet from the first film.
It is.
And so that's why
for
I
me,
did mine in the style of yours.
Again, these are all levels of happiness, but certainly, yes, as long as I know, obviously wanting one that was used, obviously very important, screen used helmet and all that kind of stuff from Star Wars, very, very important. But obviously, to whatever extent, the match, the chip match, which is the easiest part of it, although there are a million other telltale match signs to it, but obviously the chip made it easy. It's just a fun scene. I mean, it's just a nice one to sort of, it's from that scene. And what I love about it, and I think we've talked again a little bit about this, but it jumps around as to where it is in the scene, between the wide shots and the close-ups, which I think sort of speaks to whether it was the guy themselves moving around or people just accidentally switching helmets. I guess it doesn't really matter when you think about it, but it does speak to what again you were calling the run and gun sort of, Ryan, of it all, which is like this thing. We wish it was a precise science that helmet was always in that spot, but it isn't. And that was sort of, again, some of the magic of the original Star Wars, where, again, they were just, making it by the seat of their pants. So anyway, it speaks to me for a lot of reasons for those, I don't know, that I always think about those things. Yeah.
I think all the British actors were just over it so hard. They were just like, what the
just give me that.
I don't know if
oh my God. Like
Dave, I don't know if I've told you this. I definitely have not told on the podcast. It feels like a fitting time. So David Hancock, the very talented writer producer who's working with us on House of the Dragon, who we hired this year to help out with coverage on set, producing the show, because he had a ton of work on set as a writer producer on The Crown, a very talented writer, and we brought him on sort of in the post writing period of season 1. He grew up here in England. He's a British writer. I wanted a British writer on the show that had specifically done The Crown, because he does all of our etiquette stuff with the AD teams and bowing and when to courtesy and whether to you can turn your back on the Queen or King when you leave the room, all those important things. But he told me this great story because he is also a giant science fiction nerd. His English teacher in primary school was a Imperial Stormtrooper.
Oh, that's excellent.
Which is kind of great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kept his costume or no? Kept his helmet or no?
Well, the first question I asked,
of course.
Yeah. And Dave said, he's like, I have no idea. So
this goes back to the skeleton thing, and it's one of these interesting points, which is, and it gets a little bit into displaying stuff too, which is, one of the, I think we talked about this with Rob Klein on one of our early shows, maybe, because he helped me build my display for my Cylon, sort of the cousin, if you will, of the Stormtrooper, my original Battlestar Galactica Cylon. And part of the making those displays work was the knowledge of who the people were that were playing the Cylons, which were, they had gotten a bunch of like tall extras, that they had a bunch of them, just tall. I think they were basketball players. So they had very tall extras. So the Cylons were tall. So your Cylon becomes that much better if you display it on an over sort of 6 foot tall mannequin. It just brings it to another level than, say, if you have even a 6 foot mannequin or a 5'10" mannequin, again, just in terms of how you're thinking about it. And going back to the skeleton thing, and this speaks to, I guess, just England, the guys that played the Stormtroopers were definitely thin British guys. You can certainly imagine, obviously, like a teacher, like a very thin teacher of some sort. Because what happens is when they wear the costume, which has a thickness to it, they become sort of normal size. sized, but they're very thin to begin with. And so when they put the costume on, they become normal size. So the great displays are normal size, which obviously is why when a normal sized person begins to put a Stormtrooper costume on, you start getting more black, or you kind of get a sort of very quickly a sort of thicker Stormtrooper, if you will. And they were just, and again, it's Anthony Daniels as well. It's what's his name who played Boba Fett. These guys wearing the costume were so goddamn thin and scrawny.
Everyone in the 70s was really skinny for like, I don't know what it was,
but it just I do
like,
think it's
any
the
footage
UK.
you ever
Part
seen,
of it,
like,
part of it's the UK though. But it is that thing of like, it's part of what makes. It's not just why the costumes are great unto themselves, but when they were worn back then or properly displayed, obviously there's a way to it that makes it look very human and in very form fitting in a good way. So anyway, wherever that fits in.
I love that you brought that up. I'll even expand on that just a little bit even more. Is that like, when they, no, I think I might have a photo of this somewhere, but there's a picture of the body form that they used to sculpt the Stormtrooper armor onto, and I think they used it for other things as well. So they just, whoever they picked, whatever average Joe skinny British guy that they used to do that, when they sculpted the armor on him, it was on a skinny dude. Now, whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. Probably not. But one thing that I do agree with is that one thing about the classic Stormtrooper is that I don't think has happened since the first three movies, is that, they were organically sculpted on a form. And then, when they made like Stormtroopers for the sequel trilogy, for example, like for Force Awakens, or for even when they remade the classic troopers for Rogue One, like they didn't sculpt them for a skinny person's body. They made them
I mean,
more
this all sounds very strangely
average people.
This sounds all very body
So
shaming, but it's sort of like in the original Star Wars, they sculpted to a size, and then they found extras that basically fit the costume.
That's how you got the job. Like, you got to be Boba Fett because you fit the costume. It wasn't like we're casting for a bounty hunter. They were like, hey, you were an AT-AT pilot yesterday. Well, can you be Boba Fett today? Can you fit in this? Try it on.
Right. You weigh 104 pounds and you're 5'11". Can you be this? Yeah.
Perfect. So when you see like the troopers from like the sequel trilogy and like Rogue One, like they look so thick and chunky in their costumes because they weren't sculpted over a skinny person. It's like you want, and this is like the designer of me talking, okay? You want the person in the armor to look normal proportional for like a, how can I explain this?
Well, to me, it's just you want the uniformity of look, and what ends up happening in the movies is they start to look like Star Wars conventions where people are cosplaying and dressed up as Stormtroopers.
Oh my god!
Because they become more personal. And again, great, more power to you. I love it. I wouldn't wear one if you paid me. But the larger point here is, though, I enjoy that original sort of, if you will, like
aesthetic.
Yes, exactly. Which is they are identical. They are all 5'11" and however many pounds, and it is what it is. And again, more power to you. Wear whatever you want. I'm just talking about. I love that sort of sense of the Star Wars movie, as a force. Yes, exactly.
It's just more like, like you have to, in order to get armor that looks proportional and correct, you have to start with a much skinnier form so that when you add bulk to it, it still doesn't look thick and chunky. You know what I mean? You have to go start smaller so that, you know what I mean? Like, if here's my arm and I want a forearm, I want the forearm to be this wide. I can't start with the forearm.
You have to start a lot thinner.
It's going to be this big, right? So, and it's over the whole body. It's like it just starts to chunk out when you start expanding it and all the different.
But I also think it is very important, and obviously, we talked about, you helped me display mine, and I think that's one of the things about the display, which obviously is the whole thing that you put it on was a custom thing of your design, but the mannequin, it's not really a mannequin, it's a mannequin of your making, is sort of thin, pasty, and British. I mean, that's what it is. It's a very, it's very 1976 British guy. Yeah, that's not eating a lot of fruit and vegetables. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thing about these life-size displays,
he has trouble with direct confrontation.
Very polite.
no eye contact. You can have like the most amazing screen use costume and put it on a display that's just not flattering to it, and it just ruins the whole thing. Like I
Yes.
feel like the
Yes.
display that's built on is almost it's almost
No,
as
it's
important
as important in
the
its own
item
way.
itself
Yeah,
that's
I
being
agree.
displayed.
My
All right,
final
let's,
point before one last quick
okay.
little point is we think
Yeah.
there were 6 stormtroopers sent for the Sandtroopers, right? We think there were 6 of those that were sent.
I think 7.
7.
It's
Okay.
confusing because on in Tunisia, like, we can see 6, but then when they're back in England, there's 7. So I don't
Okay.
know if, like,
But-
maybe that was just another background when that was added to
Right.
the 6. But in
And
Tunisia,
I don't know if it was
6.
the Tunisia or the different paint or whatever, but obviously it's interesting that 5 of those 6 or 7 have been identified for whatever reason. Those got
Yeah.
out, which I think is just, I don't know, it's a fascinating thing as opposed to however many of the other stormtroopers that were made. I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, I mean,
yeah,
I wonder
just-
if you count, like, how many, like, I one thing I should have done, and I didn't do this, was take some notes just so I had them on hand, was, how many heroes there were. I mean, that we know of right now that exist, how many backgrounds, how many Sandtroopers, and then what proportion of them are actually matched or whatever. Because it's almost kind of proportional. Like, you think, out of 30 Stormtrooper helmets, background ones, how many do we have? It's like 7 or something, and then, like, the hero helmets, I mean, 4 of the 6.
The numbers, I mean, again,
6,
they're just, it's interesting to me. So, all right, let's jump forward now to the, should we call it the Mark II, the MK2? What you want to explain? Let's just start with, what is the MK2? Because it's funny, again, I'm dating myself. The MK2 and information about it, when I was first kind of getting into the sort of prop world, that was a quote unquote new revelation and much discussed, much disputed at the time.
It's still very
yeah, it's
muddied
still a little
and
kind of, it's a
not
little
clear,
confusing
even
yeah.
now. So I think I just recently had a conversation, not super recently, but I think I just had a conversation with someone else. It might have been Brandon, where we were trying to nail this down or get some clarity on it, and it's just so muddy that it's like if you look at the photo, if we skip ahead to the pictures of the Mark IIs that I have, it's like, well, one of them is for sure in Lucasfilm Archives, and it's a Mark II, but it has flat lenses. And then there's this other version that has bubbled lenses. What's the, like,
why and what?
Like, even with
what
all,
else?
all my
what
study,
else?
like, no
Well,
one really knows the answers to this. Like,
but what?
First,
let's
tell us
talk about.
what
Tell
what
us.
is
Yeah.
it?
When is it?
Yeah.
What is it? What distinguishes it from the original ones?
Okay, so at the end of the New Hope production, like, the trooper costumes were beat to shit, like pretty much almost unusable. So they set off to, like, make new stormtroopers for Empire. But they, but when they added, like, the snow troopers and all that, like, it was like, we're only going to have stormtroopers on Cloud City. We don't need 50 of these things. Maybe we can just take, some of the leftover stuff from the previous film, which they like to do, and refurbish things and try to use whatever they could, and fix them up to use. But before they decided to go that route to take the ones and refurbish them, they had started the process of making new ones, all in white plastic, no green helmets with the stuff coming off and everything else like that. And they tried to make improvements to them here and there, which I don't believe they were improvements, but, like, from their standpoint, they're maybe simpler to make or manufacture, easier to wear, what have you. But for whatever reason, they couldn't get it done in time. They only made a handful of them for, like, promotional appearances, and they just decided to go ahead and just use the ones from New Hope, and they just gave them a refurbishing. And then I think they made like 10 of them or so, or they refurbished like 10 of them for use in Empire.
So these Mark II helmets never actually appear in the film.
So it's controversial.
Yeah,
like,
I was about to say,
think,
isn't this
like,
the great? Yeah, there's in some promo photos, right? Isn't that what my memory was?
I believe I used to be to say, like, I don't believe that any of them were used on screen, but I think I may have come around to,
you
like,
don't believe
that
okay.
one of them was. I think now maybe I think one of them was. I think I've been convinced.
Okay,
but only one. If that, only one. And then the only other time we see them is during, like, promotional photography, or, like, when they're out, like, promoting the movie or whatever. And then
okay,
the molds that they had created to make those, that's what they used to make the Stormtroopers for Return of the Jedi. And so
Got
there's
it.
distinguishing features between the Mark IIs and the Return of the Jedi, but they come from the same set of molds.
So just
Got it.
really quickly, what jumps out at you as sort of a distinguishing feature between the Mark IIs and Star Wars? Like, what do you notice? Where does your eye go? What are some of the differences?
I mean, you mean from like the A New Hope helmets?
Yes, exactly. Is there something
the
that
difference
jumps
between the New Hope helmets?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Or
the
is it
bubble
just
lenses,
right?
the decals, instead of the painted hand,
They go to decals instead. Yeah.
details and stuff like that. The way
Yeah.
the mouth is painted, like they went from
Black.
having a gray painted teeth to black painted teeth.
Okay.
Stuff like that. And they just look, they're just overall softer. Like they're very soft, and kind of like how the heroes were kind of soft, so that they could get them off the mold. They had to like make those soft also, so they could get them off the mold, which is why the Return of the Jedi helmets and the Mark IIs are all soft.
Yeah.
And do we think some of
I
that
just-
is that they may have remolded some of the heroes so that they were remolding things so that you were losing generations and they were softening, or do we think they were purposely softening because of plastic? You know what I mean?
I think they absolutely purposely softened the things. I mean, I'm
Gotcha.
sure that they just recast another one of the pieces, whether it was a hero or a background helmet. It's up for debate. But they did so much work filling in all the stuff like that. There's no question in my mind it was intentional. It's not like just subtle things.
Right. It goes to just the process overall and the pulling them off the molds as quick as possible. Okay, so the
and
MK
without damaging them
right.
and having waste and everything.
So what we call the actual, again, Empire helmets, we're now talking really about helmets, most likely background helmets from the original Star Wars that are basically refurbished. They're repainted,
Correct.
they get the decals, different things like that, and they get turned into what we now call the ESB helmets, of which we know of a couple that are in private hands. And we've got a couple of really nice pictures of a couple of them, which is great. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, a question and follow up for that is like, knowing that these were sort of refurbs of things in A New Hope. Gino, have you been able to connect any of these known Empire helmets back to original Star Wars?
You mean like in their like be able to reverse find them and
essentially like,
Empire?
this is the helmet from. Oh, that
I have not. I don't even. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I don't even think that I've even tried to do that. But it's an interesting thing. Maybe
what the hell are you doing with your time, Gino? What the fuck are you up to? Come on,
he is making.
You come on this show as some kind of an expert, and you haven't even. Yeah, I don't understand. Do your homework. God damn it. I apologize to the audience, please.
No, but that's actually something.
For those two of you still listening here at the 9-hour
Good
mark,
Lord.
I apologize on behalf of our guest, Mr. Sabatino. We are deeply apologetic, and to our sponsors. Yeah. That's interesting, though. I mean, I wonder if there is something. I guess it would have to be something, I guess, really in the mold more, because obviously they were repainted and whatnot. So you'd really have to find a flaw that carried through. I mean, that's what you'd be looking for.
And it's even more difficult because they like retrim the eyes out to make them bigger for all the Empire helmets.
Yep, I can see that.
So it's like that's taking away one thing that you might look at,
thing,
like things like that. So it's really, I'm not saying it's impossible, but with enough pictures and I think that's something I might do when I'm bored. Is
now you're gonna go
take the 3 or 4 known helmets that we have and just run them through my filter and see if I can happen to match them up against something.
Do any of those, they're known helmets, and it seems from these photos that you're suggesting that there are screen matches in there. Are there definitive screen matches in Empire?
Yeah. I think we have one that's a definitive screen
match.
And
that's a Bespin scene. Yes, is that where that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they only show up in Bespin, but it's like it's one of the stormtroopers that's standing on guard when Lando's talking to Boba Fett. Darth Vader's in there.
I can tell that scene.
In the interrogation room or whatever like that. There's 2 stormtroopers standing on either side of the door, and it's like that guy.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's the one that has that patch on the back. That Star Wars patch glue.
The sticker helmet, right?
Oh,
or was it a patch?
Yeah, it's like a embroidered patch that someone had taken and thought it would be cool to glue on in case you didn't know what movie it was from.
Look, I stand behind my decision to glue it there. I thought it was really cool. I'm really happy I glued that on.
And Dave, you also had it signed by William Shatner.
Yeah, I had it just right across the nose, Shatner. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
space, right? Space. It's cool.
Yeah.
Could,
You know,
Just
it's
in
in
case
funny.
you
theory,
weren't
could you
sure.
take that thing off? Could you? Is that within your restoration capabilities, Gino, without doing massive paint loss?
Oh my god, I don't know. I feel like because that paint is so easy to break off of that green plastic that I don't know if I'd be able to get
You know what you can
that
do is you
glue
could
off of
pull
that.
the patch off and then replace it with a different patch,
There you go.
like just some kind
Grateful
of
Dead.
other patch. Yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
could be really
Yeah.
nice. It is
An
funny
Empire Strikes Back patch.
when you see these Empire ones, you do see sort of they to me you feel the amount of paint, like whatever you want to call there's a lot of paint on them. Whatever their refurbishment technique was, there's a lot of paint on them. That's what I notice. And it's not something
Yeah.
it's funny, in my multi Stormtrooper helmet owning life, this is not something I've ever owned or been offered one, but they are cool. I'm staring at them and they are cool, so I will say that.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I
I've
think
never
we
seen.
only know of what three. I don't know. See, three of them.
Yeah, it seems like, and then maybe the
One,
the
two,
Mark II, depending on
three.
what you feel about
Yeah,
that. But that's the thing. I
I
mean,
don't consider that.
think about Empire, guys. Like, they're just, Empire is festooned with, snow troopers and Darth Vader and AT-ATs and things like that, but you don't see any of the classic Stormtrooper until you get to Bespin, which is the last kind of third of the film. And they're just, there's that one like platoon that's there, guarding Vader and Boba Fett, and then escorting, guarding the carbon freezing chamber, and then escorting the block of Han Solo back to Boba Fett's ship. But
The
that's
same
that's
10
kind of,
guys over and over getting
yeah,
shot and
yeah,
getting
that
back up and
yeah, there you go. That's kind of the thing. All right, well, should we move on to Jedi then? Because there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with Jedi.
there it is.
Please.
Well,
Well, I think it is interesting sort of
I'm being
how they sort
sarcastic.
of I think what hits me with Jedi is sort of the sense of I don't know what to call it, the perfection maybe of sort of their
yes.
mass production of them. Like they sort of figure it out a little bit more. That's how I like to think of it. I mean,
There's a
especially yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's just an overall quality with Jedi when you look at that film where you see like, oh, they finally have the money they wanted the whole time, because just everything, the amount of things that they have, the quality of the construction, the way things look on film, just the polish of that film, whatever you think of Jedi compared to Empire and A New Hope, um, it just feels more like a studio production versus the others. Certainly more than A New
There's a
Hope.
sense of mass production. There's a
Yeah.
lot less sense of differentials between individual helmets. You are still hand making them, but on a larger scale. But you are losing a lot of that. Oh, look how this one is, and look how that one is, and this ear. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot less of that. And then from the inside, just to talk about the inside, which we've talked a little bit about, you're kind of getting into, oh, someone was actually thinking a little bit about the fact of me. And I don't know whether this was, and again, I will not put it past him that like if George Lucas sometimes worried that, oh, I couldn't use that shot because a helmet was a little cockeyed or whatnot, you've now got this sort of helmet lining that kind of sits on your head like I don't know, I guess like a hard hat kind of
It's a hard hat
is that
liner,
yeah, it's
right?
basically a hard
Yeah.
hat liner
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
basically makes how they sit on the human head more uniform as well, and I guess maybe comes on and off easier too. But however you want to think of why they did it, there again, it speaks to this sort of larger scale perfection, at least of what they're trying to do, which I do find fascinating about Jedi, because at that point it is big business. Not that the other two weren't, but it's big business
Yeah,
at this
and
point.
they
Yeah.
just, it feels like a big studio prop too. Like, I've owned a Jedi helmet. Dave, you also have owned multiple
Yeah.
Jedi helmets. There's just a thing to it, and like, whatever you think of the design, whether it charms you the way the A New Hope helmets does, that's all, all those kind of subjective emotions aside, it's just a more solidly built thing that feels more like a studio piece. There are these thick, nice, chunky bubble lenses that that squeeze into the eyes and kind of fit perfectly. There are decals done on the helmet. It's not all hand painted. There's this kind of finished feeling hard hat liner on the inside that makes it feel like a real studio prop. There's either
I was
a
gonna say there's
level of
there's no paint chips. It's all just
correct, yeah, because it's just cast in that plastic. But then there's also professional studio weathering on a bunch of them, because the ones that end up down on Endor to tell the story of these stormtroopers who have been garrisoned on this kind of primitive planet, they're dirtier than the ones that you see on the
the one
Darth
I
Star, the
had
Death Star,
from
for
the
the
one I had
like
that
Triumph
was
of the Will thing.
used on Endor was, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it was quote unquote dirty, but it was the opposite of like, oh, someone threw dirt on it. It was like the dirt was almost
They
like
misted it with
glazed
an
onto
airbrush.
it, or sprayed onto it in a way that just was,
Yeah,
I don't know, this is gonna
studio
sound really
weathering.
silly, but it was beautiful. It was truly
Yeah,
beautiful. Like it was so, the weathering was perfect unto itself
yeah,
in a really
yeah.
great way. Yeah.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine was like that too. And I love all the little, like, the thing for me as a collector that I love about the Jedi helmets is all the little stories that come with how they got out. Like there was definitely one that got out because the extra that was playing the Stormtrooper like hid it in the woods at the end of production with the hope that he
I've
could
heard that
go back
story.
and get it to either use for his son for Halloween or use for himself for a Halloween party. And then the one that I got was with, it was like some crew member's uh, ex-wife that had ended up with it in the divorce and like kept it in the closet, and then decided at some point just like, oh, these are worth quite a bit of money, I'm just going to sell it out from under him. And it had like
Damn.
books or something like put
Which, by the way,
on
will
top of it.
definitely be the future of this podcast. By the way,
Yes,
yeah. When
for sure,
when the wives basically win this
Season 4.
podcast and our props from us in the divorce, they'll can just kind of come on and have a big garage sale. But yeah,
Big laugh, yeah.
Whatever.
They'll
I want to be.
trade
I want to
back
be
and
your
forth.
ward, Dave. I want when in your will, so that doesn't happen. There's a couple key pieces I'd like to have you just put me.
oh,
in
you
there.
can
Like,
you
you
can
don't- if
talk
don't
about it.
mind.
You can talk about it with
Just-
my
just a
son.
couple-
He might fight you, but
Okay.
you're bigger still. But he's growing,
Okay.
so we'll to be
Yeah.
discussed. Yeah,
It's
Um,
it's
He'll
coming.
grow up and not even care about Star Wars, so it's fine.
it's very
It'll work out.
very possible.
And then I had heard this story for a long time that that one had like traveled around in like one of the transportation vans, like it was just like the mascot in the transportation van or something like that, and it had never been seen again. But I don't know, there were just more helmets on Jedi. I mean, is that fair, Gino? Would you say that there were more built for
Oh.
Jedi than any of the other films?
Tons. They made tons of biker
Well,
scouts.
look at
and
what we've
tons
seen.
Of stormtroopers.
Look
for
at what
Jedi.
we've seen at the archives. That is legitimately not a dig at you having not been to the archives, Ryan. But they've got
But it
a
is,
crap
so-
load. It is. I mean, it luckily serves both
You know, Ryan,
purposes.
you've seen them, right?
It's a factual
No.
point that I really do want to make, and I get to make fun of
And-
you. It's sort of
and
a
it
two for
needles me.
oneer, but they have a
Yeah.
crap load. And then, of course, also the rumor, right? We've talked about this on the show, I think, before, that they buried a lot of like stormtrooper costumes in the middle of the woods or whatever. You know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
story, right? Yeah. It's
Yeah, I
somewhere-
went digging out there, Dave.
Oh, sure. Yeah, exactly.
I went digging out there before marriage and kids. Yeah, I went digging around in that.
Somewhere is the great pit of
in
like
Endor.
stormtrooper, full stormtrooper. I know
we
you
found
found like
stuff.
things, but you didn't
chunks
find
of fiberglass.
full stormtrooper
No.
costumes and like ATSTs
No.
and stuff like that were just
No.
like left and abandoned.
We
Yes.
found-
It's like the treasure from Goonies or something.
Yeah.
We
like
found
that, you know?
we found Jimmy Hoffa, but we did not find any stormtroopers. So I have a question. This is a subject possibly for another podcast because we're doing stormtroopers only here. But where are all the biker scouts?
They're all in the archives.
in the pit.
all of them are.
Almost
in the
all
pit.
of them.
I see.
Yeah.
Good.
What did I tell you?
Yeah,
The
there's
pit.
an off-site pit
Yeah.
location. That's a branch of the archive.
Are there really that many in the archive? I mean, again, having
Yeah,
not
there
been, as
are
we've
a
made it
lot.
clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
lots of them. Like it's amazing that like I know of a couple that have gotten out. I'm sure you guys have seen most of those helmets and everything. But no costumes. I've never seen.
No.
I mean,
Yeah, I've
Like-
seen helmets. I've not seen a
like
costume.
I've seen production made costumes, but never like an actual screen use costume biker scout.
Yeah.
But helmets.
Never seen a costume. I feel like
I
maybe
love that helmet.
like a random costume piece or two, but like we're talking like nothing. You know what I mean? But
I've never seen
yeah.
anything
thought
that
I've
was.
seen that,
I
but,
personally haven't seen anything that wasn't. I've seen production made stuff, but never anything that was like a screen use finished costume component. Yet.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, I do. I am a fan of that helmet as well. That is one
Start
that has
digging up.
eluded me, as they say. I got to get up to the.
And
I got to get up to the
and
redwoods with my shovel and find one. Yeah.
and I got to get up to the archives. We
One
kind
of
brought
those
this
two
up a little.
things is more likely. Go on. Sorry.
That's very true. You're not going to the redwoods with a
I'm
shovel.
not going to the redwoods, so that's the point in your favor.
Yeah. We sort of brought this up earlier, but I kind of said this, just off the cuff, not really knowing. I think I know, but there are no official matched true Stormtrooper helmets from Jedi. Is that correct, as to your knowledge, Gino?
Oh man, I cannot speak to that. I've done any matching on Return of the Jedi.
I've
gonna
never
break
been
for you
able to
guys.
match the ones that I had. I mean, for whatever it's worth, and again, not for lack of trying, but just nothing has ever been able to make me let them match them. And I've thought there were things that maybe would, and I just have not. I certainly have not.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that is me just not really liking the Return of the Jedi stuff.
So wait,
why
do you
going back like 10 minutes?
The movie or the design or what? Go for it. Yeah, this is your opportunity.
So going back to what you guys are saying, I don't wanna interrupt, but
this is ironic, but okay, say your piece, and then I think we have a very funny special guest. Yeah.
Okay. George Lucas?
No, I'm not. No names. Just go ahead.
Okay. Just checking, because you always tease that, and I thought maybe because I was coming.
I know we tease it, but say what you.
It is Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
I did. Okay. So I think that the costumes that were made in England for Jedi were kind of crap. So like when they remade Darth Vader,
tell that to Ryan's friend's teacher. Oh wait, sorry.
When
he was in the New Hope.
When they did the Stormtroopers, like I think they're all very much watered down versions of the best. Like if you take like the Darth Vader costumes. Or the Boba Fett costume, it's like there's the iconic, like this is the quintessential, this is the best version of it from the movies, right? And then it's like when you hit Jedi, it's like it's the worst version for all of them, in my opinion. You know what I mean? But then the stuff that they did at ILM, like it boggles my mind how some of these things, like the B-wing pilot helmets and the like all that stuff that like I don't even remember buying toys of this stuff when I was a kid because you saw them on screen, but like I'm not super familiar with those helmets. But like when you look at them, like you look through the Brandon's costume book or anything like that, like the artistry and the paint work and all that stuff is like next level, like better than anything from the entire
I agree. When I was a teenager, like it was like, do you want to buy a B-wing fighter? It's like, F that. I have no interest in that. That guy was on screen for 3 seconds. I never played with a
B-wing when
right. And now as a collector, I'm like, if I could just find an honest to God screen used B-wing, not just a production made one, that would be the greatest thing in the world. It's like your priorities do change. But so that stuff was made, obviously, as you say, by ILM, which at this point is ILM, and obviously they're using that and they're shooting all of that stuff back in Lucas.
I don't know if they sent the stuff over to the UK or not.
Okay, but, like, you think they shot it there? Okay, I wondered if that was all just special effects stuff, but yeah.
I'm not sure where if stuff went back and forth, but like all the B-wings and A-wings, like all those type of things, like you look at the painting and the weathering and the assembly and the little like details and greebly, like it's incredibly well done. It's like I look at that and I'm like, damn, like that takes some real artistry. Like they put like their soul into painting these pieces. There are no other things in the whole rest of the classic trilogy that are that well done, in my opinion. And like no one cares about them. I don't care about them. Like I wouldn't want them just because I never, as a kid, I had no nostalgia connection for them.
Yeah.
But just from just judging them from a design perspective or a quality, it's like they just like next level stuff. And then you look at like, to me, like the Return of the Jedi Stormtroopers, and it's like they're embarrassing. It's like I really just hate them. Like I really do. I feel like if I didn't say that, like I would lose street cred, because like most
so
people,
for you,
like,
it's the look. I know it's the look of them. Are you okay with the plastic they used, or is that part of it as well?
The plastic's fine. It's knowing that the people who were in charge of making them were just not sensitive to trying to retain that original design, and they dropped the ball, like they do in so many productions. It's like it wasn't
Yeah.
top of mind for them to be like, wait a minute, here's the example from from the first film, and ours, look how much different the one we came up with looks like. And well, that's fine. It'll be fine.
In some ways, I guess it is
like
the beginning.
It wasn't top of mind.
Right. It's the beginning of the evolution of, I guess, a little bit of like where stormtroopers are now, that even by Jedi, they're, I guess, a little bit, quote unquote, less good. And that, again, we talked about has kind of continued. I do think, it's ironic because, well, I was just going to say is the Biker Scout to me is perfection. I mean, I love the Biker Scout. It is just incredible. It's badass and whatever. And you can certainly understand how a costume department is obsessing on the Biker Scout, and then the Stormtrooper, which is, it's just a regular Stormtrooper, becomes sort of tertiary. You also have on that movie, what's his name? Nilo becomes sort of the co-costume person, and his specialty
was a controversial choice,
right?
At the
because
time.
he's more of a designer and less kind of. And again, this is
he's
I'm
not a
basing
costume
this on
person.
what I've read. Right, he's not a costume person, and sort of ceded the making of the stuff to other people who knew differently, whereas Malo sort of was designing and obviously working with the designers, but also was a costume maker and was sort of a little more both. And I wonder if that's a part of it too. And that's not based on any information, just an extrapolation of thoughts, from what we know about the arrangement, if you will. Anyway.
And then also like the Biker Scouts and all that stuff were made in the States, like the Royal Guards and all that kind of stuff. Like
I believe the people of the United Kingdom could have made a good Stormtrooper helmet. I do think I think the larger point is it was not it was not a focus at the time. I do think that's part of it.
Right.
But yeah, yes, sort of. They were old hat by the time Jedi rolled around.
Yes.
Sort of an interesting way.
They were just making the donuts. We need 50 of these. Okay. Just bang them out.
So Gino, just bringing things full circle, back around to the Stop That Ship helmet. You did a substantial amount of beautiful restoration work on this wonderful helmet. Can you talk specifically, whatever you are able to talk about what you did? And then
this is the one that is coming up. Home. This we think it's the cover piece, but this is the heritage one, right? This is
it's a heritage like June 20 something 19th 18th, something like that. Just look ha.com. You can go find it over there.
Yeah, so like I remember when these helmets first went up for auction at Christie's, when they first popped up, and it was that they had said that they were rescued from a dumpster and all that, and
they were for they were beater than beat. I mean, they really were.
I know. It was like one sold for like 30,000, and then I think the other one sold for less than that.
Yeah.
And we think about, like, to me, that wasn't that long ago. Like when I think about from that time to now, like I'm like, that was like 10 years ago, right? But I'm sure it was longer than
I think it was 2003. I think that was like I think it was 03, 04. So you're talking like 18, 19 years.
10 years ago, 2003, 10 years ago. Go on.
Yeah.
But it's not about how long it was, it's how long it feels like it was.
Yes.
It feels like it was 10 years ago. So, I think of that, and I think of like what they go for now, and it's just like, oh my God. Like, can you believe, that's just so amazing to me.
So what did you have
gotten this for that money?
No, I mean, even at the time, I mean, again, they were really beat up, but I do remember even at the time, people were sort of like, should I? But there was, by the way, at the time, a sense that restoration was not an easy thing. So that was also, I think, a part of it. And, what your restoration obviously is very sympathetic, obviously. You did a wonder. What was, so let's start with what was missing. Let's just start there. What was right off the bat? What was missing?
Yeah.
What did you? Yeah.
So right out of the gate, it was missing both ears.
Yep.
It was missing its lens. It was missing its neck trim. It was missing its foam. And the chin strap. And so like in my personal collection, like I have several different molds from screen use helmets that are first gen from stunt background helmets that I then pulled from to like be able to replicate those ears. So like they're just, as close as you could possibly get to the real deal. All the paint, I hand matched the aged paint because it had yellowed quite significantly.
The paint match is kind of uncanny. I mean,
it's wild.
I thought I was going to go nuts. Like seriously, like, it's one of those things, like you could just drive yourself nuts. Like you just, especially grays, like grays, like they can shift purple, they can shift blue, they can shift pink, like they just, but like getting it to the point where like you could paint right on it and you wouldn't see it. It's like, so anyway, I didn't have to do any paint work. I didn't do anything to the actual piece.
I actually, just to talk about the overall restoration, I sort of appreciated the fact that the owner, or you and the owner together, didn't do that. That you replaced the ears, which needed replacing, and you put the the stuff that was missing on, all of which is readily identifiable. But obviously, there's a huge amount of paint missing on it throughout. But I guess to me, that's what gives it character. And were you to cover that all up, well, then at that point, you might as well just go buy a replica. Again, this is my own theory of restoration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've got lots of thoughts on all that. So the way I kind of feel about it is I feel like it's super subjective. And there's like there's a tipping point where,
but the beauty of having a podcast is we get to say our opinions as if they are just fact.
Just fact.
Great.
Yes.
You tell me now at the end.
If you
like
fix the top, if you fix the top of this helmet, you're a dummy. So anyway, go on.
Man. Okay. Well, let's just redo the whole thing and I'll talk from fact. Like, let's just start over. Okay. Okay. So, I think that, certain things, like I agree. Like if the guy wanted me to like fix some of that stuff, like I wouldn't have, even if he wanted to pay me to do it, I wouldn't have done that. Like these pieces are important to me and they're special to me. And like, I see people do bad restorations all the time. And like, something comes through or someone shows something to me. And I'm just like, how did that happen? Like, how did this occur? Like who thought that this is like, whoever did this work? Like, I never know who the people are usually. And it's probably a good thing, because I feel like I would get myself in trouble by calling them out or something. But I just think like these pieces are special. Like, you have to treat them as like artifacts. And, I wouldn't have wanted to do anything to disrupt any of the originality of this piece. But that being said, there's a tipping point where so much of the original stuff is lost that it's just not displayable anymore. I could totally see, like, and everyone's different, but for me, like, if I bought a Screen U Stormtrooper helmet and it was like 3/4 of the paint was gone, but 1/4 of it was still there.
And maybe that brings us to the next piece, which is
yes, exactly. That's perfect. That's I was leading right into that. Yeah.
And this is a background helmet from A New Hope that we think is also coming up for auction. We think in Julian's. Am I saying this right?
Julian's,
This is going to be in Julian's, and we think they're having a June auction as well. But I don't think we know those dates yet. But we'll find out and get that information to you. This one. I mean,
wow.
I've sort of tried to wonder myself, like what I would have done in this situation, because this is, beyond. This isn't beat up. This is, I don't know what to call this. So one.
It was like, this came to you just completely stripped down of everything?
No. So let me give you a little bit of history on this piece. So, it was, when it was first brought to me, it had already been stripped down to the green plastic once by someone else.
Oh, okay.
And then, in my opinion, very poorly restored. It looked like.
Do you know? Sorry, before we jump into what they did and butchered it, before it was restored the first time, have you ever seen pictures of what it looked like pre any restoration? Or
no,
I'm curious,
because the first thing I would have done is try to match it and everything else like that.
No, I was just curious whether you were working from a match, but also how bad was it that they felt to strip it? Because that to me is the larger question.
That's the thing. Like, I don't know, like the trail ends, or like where the trail begins, it's all green. That's the earliest picture we have of this. And you could see there's still some, like, because like, if you've ever, I guess I'm probably the only person in the world who's actually sanded down or removed paint from an original helmet to bring it back to green. So I can't say if you know what this feels like, but when you take it, when you're taking all that paint off, some
Oh,
of
actually,
it's really stuck on there.
they let me do that at the archives. They have a sander for their special guests. You get to just sand a
Are you
Stormtrooper.
serious?
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Have you ever
That's
done
not
that,
cool.
Ryan?
Put a coin
No?
in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's never been there. Duh.
Oh, so no,
God.
you couldn't have
Um,
sanded one. Yeah.
Now
yeah.
the guests are mocking me. Great.
He'll never have me back. Um, so some of the paint was still stuck on there pretty good. And when they had done it, the couple pictures that I have of it, like you could still see there were some patches of paint. But when I say patches, I mean like patches, like a couple little like nooks and crannies of paint. Like, and it wasn't even like the original gloss surface of it. It was like they tried to sand it off and get it off and everything. So it was all scraped and scuffed and everything anyway. So at that point, it's like, well, I mean, you can just like, in my opinion, just take it all down to green and display it as a green helmet, or you could do full restoration and turn it back into a piece that like, and again, like some people would maybe just love to have that green helmet for what it is and all that. But to me, like, I don't know, it comes down to displayability a lot. Like nothing, no matter what you do to it restoration wise, would change the fact that it was on set in England in Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like that's just a fact. It was there. It was on screen. It was used. So once you see it all painted up and done up, even if it's not exactly the helmet that it was, because you know it was a full restoration, it's like, man, it felt like a real, like I wouldn't have when it was finished, like I wouldn't have known. Like that was the goal, was to make it look like one of your helmet, like your helmet, or one of the, or that other example. Like
again, talking about
like,
the overall restoration, I certainly appreciate that it is not perfect. It doesn't look like a Don Post mask. You know what I mean? There are chips on it and little flaws and whatnot in a very purposeful way, which is kind of wonderful and gives it a feel of use. I will simply say,
and then the pictures,
I was just gonna say, I think there is a luxury to, I do think it's fascinating with no paint on. And again, if you perhaps had another Stormtrooper helmet in your collection, then you can think about that. But I will say, honestly, I do understand why, you know, there wasn't much, I don't know. I understand why it needed to get restored. I certainly understand that. Yeah.
For me, it was a no-brainer, and I guess I'm a little bit more liberal on that end of the scale. Like, you know, for example, like if there is a particular helmet that had gone through many iterations, that say like it was a primary helmet for a character or something like that, and it had gone through many iterations, and now does not look like its former hero glory because of all the stuff that's been done to it, or it's been on tour and they redid stuff or whatever and stuff, you know, all this stuff. I know there's people who would just be like, well, that's the history of the piece. And but for me, and I guess, you know, when it's your money, you can do whatever you want and people make their own decisions. But for me, like, I would want it to look like how it looked in the movie, not this janky version of itself that's like not, I don't know, I guess it's every piece is its own, I don't know. Everyone is different. I feel like you have to like assess every single one in its own set of circumstances.
It's a case by case basis.
Yeah, for sure.
And
like,
I think
I'm very much more liberal on that end. Like I'm definitely down for like sympathetic restoration and all that kind of stuff like that. But sometimes there's a tipping point where it's like, if it could be like this, like it would just be.
It's a tough one. I mean, I think about it a lot on some of my stuff, and again, we've talked about it on some of my stuff too. You know, again, this one was already sort of here. You didn't have much choice, which in a good way maybe made it an easy choice. And when you're doing these things, and you know, like with stuff like the brow, and you know the neck stuff, and then obviously the tips and whatnot. Are these things from, for lack of a better word, are these like items that are just still being made, or are you sort of making your own version, or like what are you using, and like what helps you when you're sort of coming back to put a Stormtrooper together, so to speak? Obviously, you're molding pieces that don't exist.
Yeah, so any of like the hardware and stuff like that, like I source original pieces. I have like a stockpile of original pieces for like all the costumes.
Gotcha.
For just in case. But then like you know, then there's things like the mic tips or whatever, and it's like, well, you can't go out and buy them or find them. Like we just recently identified what they were, but we still haven't found the exact correct version of it. So like I was lucky enough to actually mold an original one from a screen used helmet. So I have like perfect molds for making another duplicate of it. So and that's the case with like all the pieces and parts that aren't like off the shelf found items. But like it comes down to even simple things like the elastic. Like the elastic is specific.
Yeah.
Like you can't just go to the fabric store and pick up some elastic necessarily if you want it to match exactly. You have to source a very particular kind or what have you. So I just try to my goal whenever I'm doing something like this, or even if I'm making a replica for myself, is I want it to be like when you put it down next to another one that is an original, that even under close scrutiny you can't tell the difference. And if I feel like I've achieved that, then I feel like then I've hit my goal.
Well,
and so this was the first time I've ever tried to make a helmet that was like distressed like this to make it look like a 40-year-old beat up helmet, because that's not how I typically do my replicas necessarily. I try to keep mine kind of how they appeared on set, as opposed to what they look like now. That's just my personal preference.
I lean
lean
towards this version. I have no ownership of this piece. I lean towards this version. I do worry about things sometimes when they look too perfect. That's I don't know. That's an issue.
Yeah, or
for
too
me.
beat up
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
like
well, that
fake
too.
beat
But
up.
yeah,
that's
certainly fake
it.
beat up. Yes, this could go too far in that direction. But I just mean this looks lived in enough. And again, and also the other thing I appreciate obviously is it's documented. So
yes,
I mean, what you did. People know what
Nobody's
you did.
faking
the
it.
seller knows what you did.
Yeah,
no one's pretending
absolutely.
otherwise, which I think is, by the way, a really important thing of when you're buying these things, again, to know what you're getting into, especially as restoration kind of can get that good. But really, I mean, gorgeous. And obviously kudos to both owners for getting you involved, because boy, these look really great, and I'm excited to sort of see where both of them go in the
upcoming
in June,
summer of Stormtroopers. So
really cool. Yeah,
this has been a truly supersized deep dive, but that's what we get. We go from sort of fan accessible episodes doing mail and questions and things like that, and then we do these crazy deep dives. But people seem to really like these episodes. I think our most sort of re-listened to and super downloaded episodes have been our deep dive. So hopefully this has been another great one. I think this was a great topic. I had shared an earlier worry with Dave that we maybe needed to add armor and weapons to this because there wasn't
to try
enough
and help
about.
fill out the 7 hours.
And here we are entering our
it's all my fault. I just like to talk.
All right. No, this was totally great. No, totally great, Gino. But fans are going to love this. It's Star Wars Day. It's Star Wars.
By the way,
week.
If we had a brain, we would literally split this into 2 episodes and do part 1 and part 2 and give ourselves a week off. But we are idiots, and so we'll probably just put this out as a
correct
2.5 hour extravaganza, and then scramble to record again next weekend.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the Darth Vader deep dive whenever that's going to happen.
Let's do it. We'll bring you back.
Season 11. It's coming around. It's coming very soon.
We'll bring it back and do that. So Gino, where can people? I meant to ask it earlier. Now we can ask it. Where's the best place for people to go see your stuff, but most importantly, your awesome Yoda project?
So all my social media is Star Wars Icons, which is just like what I call my personal like portfolio of like Star Wars related work. So it's like my licensed prop work, stuff I've done for Lucasfilm, stuff that's in my personal collection, just restorations, all that stuff like that.
At Star Wars Icons. Bam.
Yep. On Facebook, Twitter.
Great.
I'm still learning social media. So let's Instagram, all that.
Great.
So
TikTok.
You can go there.
Great.
And, follow it, make comments.
Excellent. And you can find us at Props Podcast across all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram.
Yes, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Truth. We're on Truth now, I think.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yes. The Empire was right, and that's where we stand on it. Rebellions are bad. You can also find us on YouTube now on our official YouTube channel. You can watch the show. This is actually a great one to do on YouTube just because there's going to be so many visuals
the pictures on this. If you are listening in your car, you may want to go again and go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, please. But check it out, because we've got some really just great pictures that kind of illustrate what we're talking about. So you'll dig that big time.
You can see my face as I'm mercilessly mocked by both my co-host and my guests, and just see how I take it. I just absorb. I let it wash over me. With
you actually seem to enjoy it. You keep texting me
focus.
more, which is weird.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Give it to me.
And please email us as well at some email that I can never remember. Right?
At dreamsaremadeofpodcast@gmail.com. And
should we play the game very quickly before we say
thank you, everybody?
Quick goodbye?
Yes.
Should we play the game really quickly?
Goodbye.
You know the
Did
game,
you have
right,
a game?
Gino?
Say it again.
The game. The game, sort of our prop game. I was curious. I know it's Star Wars for you, but I was sort of curious, like, if we picked like are there other, like, do you have where do you go after the original trilogy? What is your, or let's go the other way.
Have you ever seen another movie?
Oh man.
From the new movies, from the newest trilogy of the Rey movies.
No.
Pick whatever. No, okay.
You can't ask me that.
From another movie. From another movie with armor, Excalibur. What's another movie you love?
Dave. I was thinking of this, and I didn't know which one to pull. But like, do you do Great Escape or whatever? Like a movie with actual stormtroopers in it. I was gonna do
very good, very good. Yeah,
yeah.
See, it's so easy for me to just
a movie
rattle
with
off
storms in it, like
Twister.
bad weather. Yeah,
Twister. Oh, yeah.
What is, seriously, what is your
movies,
next favorite movie after the Star Wars trilogy?
There you go.
Where would you go?
Probably Raiders.
Okay, not that one.
But at the same time, I don't really want anything from Raiders because I'm not drawn to any of the costumes or props from
What's
Raiders.
What's your other favorite sci-fi movie? Let's go there.
There you go.
Oh my God, Matrix.
We just did Matrix last week. Yeah. What else besides Matrix? By the way, this is a very odd place to be mentioning this, but I found out, we were talking a little bit about the upcoming Potter and Potter Matrix auction, and I just found that it's both Warshawskis, and that they are donating it all to I think a charity for that helps out. I want to say this properly. I think Trans Youth, I think, is the organization that's helping. Okay. I don't know the name of the organization, but obviously a wonderful charity reason to be auctioning off some really cool stuff. All right, pick just some other movie, Gino. Any movie. What's the last movie you saw?
Oh man,
what's the last movie you saw?
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters. We've never done Close Encounters. That's actually great.
Yeah.
I have not seen a lot of Close Encounter stuff. I've seen some of those interesting matte paintings, which have been around a couple of times, which is kind of cool.
The Cobb drawings.
Yep, I've seen some of those, and then I feel like there are those weird
lots of aliens.
Yeah, those alien sort of costumes, but never quite sure what those are or whatever. All right. Well, if you had to pick any prop, what would you want from it? Is it one of those aliens?
From Close Encounters?
Yeah, from Close Encounters.
One of the aliens.
It's one of the aliens.
Or the one of the the mountain, the smaller,
the miniature.
Yeah. Not the big giant one.
I'm definitely the miniature, the mountain. I think of more even than the aliens and more than, the ship at the end and the lights and whatever. I truly do just think of that mountain. So I guess for me, even a storyboard with the mountain, a painting with the mountain, concept art with the mountain, but obviously ultimately.
Oh man, any of the ones where the people were artists and made their own chalk drawings of it and stuff like that they.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
I would truly take any of that, but truly, the miniature would be incredible. I mean, that would be my dream piece, because it's just what I associate it with more than anything, I think. Ryan, you got one or something?
I go model. I mean, I just go model miniature. I mean, it's a movie about aliens. I go for one of those the first ships that he, that Dreyfus sees and kind of gets the sunburn. And I know they're very blown out with with all the lens flares and the effects, intentionally so. But I just think those are so cool. And then I would say the ship at the end, which is certainly built in miniature as well, just because that movie is actually, it's a wonderful science fiction film and story, but it's actually really hard to find those specifically the science fiction built pieces for that movie. And you guys just hit on a great thing. But for me, the ship designs in that movie are particularly cool.
They
so
are
I
gorgeous.
would,
It's
you
funny
know, I
just
would go
because
for
you
that.
never get such a clear look at them. I think of more of the blinding
know.
lights. It's just a funny thing.
I know.
mean, don't
but
get
you
me
know
wrong.
there's an
Yes, of
Right.
course.
but
of
you know
course,
there's
yeah.
an awesome studio build behind all
Oh,
that. So that
incredible.
you know
Yeah.
that's what I'm
No,
into.
the whole look and feel of that sucker is just pretty incredible, and you know, and obviously its own thing, but obviously sci-fi, but in our real world, which I you know is just sort of fascinating on a whole other level, like trying to really extrapolate what aliens could be, and in a strange way, obviously building on all those years of, you know, stories of little gray men and whatnot, but in a way, I'm not sure all these years later anybody has deviated that much from Close Encounters if you actually think
Yes.
about it, like when, you
I
know,
don't
just
think
to
there's
this
been
day.
one that's been more well done. I think that's still
Yeah,
the most
I-
well done, like
I love
of that type
that
of
kind of
story.
story.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True
Like-
true life, like, do aliens
Yeah.
exist?
Without all the cheese or the over the top,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like felt real, felt, you know,
Yeah.
scary.
No,
That's what
yeah,
made it scary. I guess to
it's
me.
incredible. It's
You know?
incredible.
All right,
there we go.
we'll see you. That's a nice tight 2 hours 37 minutes. So perfect. We'll see everybody next time. And Gino, thank you so much for joining us, and we will
Thanks for
have you
having me.
back. Yeah, this was a blast and a
Thanks,
half.
Gino.
We'll see everyone next week.